international organizations that accompany us in this seminar, advisors and students of the IADB College, and members of the armed forces and the security forces of the member countries of the IADB. Akiama Guerra, the Center for Military Perfection of the region. Ladies and gentlemen, and audience that accompanies us through the official channels of the IADB, with all of you, good morning. I'm Captain John Baramora of the Navy of Ecuador, serving at the IADB. The vision of security of the IADB in cooperation with the Department of Public Security of the OAS through its program for assistance for the control of weapons and munitions, PACAM, have realized this seminar whose topic is good practices and support as tools for the control of weapons and ammunition, with member states of the OAS sharing mechanisms of assistance in the management of ammunition and tools for their control in order to prevent their sending to other countries and reduce the risks and non-planned distribution and contribute to the national and regional stability. To continue, I'm going to give the remarks to the moderator of this event, Lieutenant of the Secretariat of the Navy of Mexico, Mr. Jose Hugo Carmona Sandoval, that is currently the analyst of the Department of Academic Evaluation of the Inter-American Defense College. Thank you very much, Captain Vera. Good morning to all. It is an honor to give you the most cordial welcome to the seminar Management of Weapons with the topic Good Practices and Support Tools for the Management of Weapons and Ammunition. The purpose of this seminar is to share experiences, tools, and good practices that will strengthen the regional mechanisms and global mechanisms in the management of weapons and ammunition in face of the security challenges that are faced by our member states. Today we have distinguished speakers, both international as hemispherical, as civilians and military, that will share their valuable experiences with us. The dynamic will be the following. Each presentation will have a total of 30 minutes. The first 5 minutes will be for the presentation of the speaker, and then the speaker will have 20 minutes for the development of the presentation. And finally, we will have 5 minutes more for questions and answers. We will start with the welcoming remarks with the intervention of General Cesar Macedo Garcia, a chairman of the Council of Delegates of the Inter-American Defense Board. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished participants, it is an honor for me to cordially welcome you to the seminar on weapons management, good practices, and tools for the support of for the management of firearms and ammunition. This event is a joint effort between the IADB and the Program of Assistance for the Control of Weapons and Ammunition of the Department of Security of the OAS. I thank profoundly the presence of the representatives of member states or international organizations, armed forces and security, as well as the technical experts that accompany us this morning. Their participation reaffirms the regional commitment with the strengthening of security, hemispheric cooperation, and the responsible management of weapons and ammunition. In a world where security and stability are fundamental, the effective management of weapons and ammunition is crucial. The security of our nations and of our people is a common objective, and events like this seminar represent a key opportunity to share experiences and review challenges and build concrete solutions. We know that the challenges that we face are very complex and changing. Organized crime, the sending of weapons, urban conflicts, as well as the risks associated to inadequate storage, demand of us articulated responses, holistic and sustained by evidence. I hope that this seminar is going to be an opportunity to strengthen our technical capabilities, but also to build trust, promote interagency trust and collaboration, and to renew our commitment with security and peace in the Americas. I thank the organizers for their hard work and dedication, and I'm certain that the presentations that we will have today are going to be very enriching and will contribute significantly to improve our capabilities in the management of weapons and ammunition. In this sense, I wish to highlight and thank very specially the valuable work of the PACAM of the OAS, whose technical support and operational support has been fundamental to advance in the consolidation of hemispheric standards in the management of arsenals and the prevention and the illegal proliferation of weapons. I wish you all a very productive seminar and an enriching one. That your participation be very fruitful and will contribute to the strengthening of the security and cooperation of our region. Thank you. Thank you very much, General Macedo. Following, we will continue with the opening remarks presented by Mr. Ivan Marquez, the Secretary of Multidimensional Security of the OAS. Dear authorities, officials, and national officials, colleagues, friends, and friends that are present and online, good morning to you all. As Secretary of Multidimensional Security, it is an honor for me to offer the opening remarks of this event that once again gathers us around a topic of greatest relevance: the prevalence of the illegal trafficking of weapons, firearms, and ammunition organized by the IADB in coordination with the Department of Public Security of the OAS. I want to start expressing a very special greeting to the IADB, to its chairman, Major General Cesar Augusto Macedo, and its General Director, General Reinaldo Beato. From the Secretariat of Multidimensional Security and the Department of Public Security, we reiterate our firm commitment to continue constructing synergies with the IADB in favor of hemispheric security and to continue assisting the member states in the strengthening of their capabilities to face threats derived from the illegal flows of weapons and ammunition that feed violence in our communities. In this sense, I am pleased to show the high level of commitment shown in this meeting and the experience accrued by many of the countries of the region. Nevertheless, we cannot ignore the enormous challenges that still persist. Latin America and the Caribbean have the highest rate of homicides in the world, and 2 of every 3 of these crimes are committed with a firearm. The proliferation and the easy access to these weapons closely linked to drug trafficking and terrorism and transnational organized crime and other criminal activities not only generate human losses that are irreparable, but also grave economic and social costs, including a strong pressure on our health system. This is why it is fundamental to redouble efforts to combat the illegal manufacturing, the proliferation, and the trafficking of weapons, applying effective controls, and adopting good international practices in order to reduce armed violence. At the OAS, we have a tool of great value: the Inter-American Convention Against the Manufacturing and the Illegal Trafficking of Firearms, CIFCA, ratified by 31 countries of the hemisphere. As the Technical Secretary of CIFCA, we continue supporting member countries in the compliance with their obligations, particularly through the Program of Assistance for the Control of Weapons and Ammunition, known as PACAM. From 2019, and thanks to the funding of the European Union, The PACAM has provided assistance to 29 countries of the Americas in diverse areas, from the development of roadmaps with the recently approved that was recently approved by the Central American countries and Dominican Republic, to the use of technologies that you will get to know more about today. Likewise, we have accompanied the states in the holistic cycle of firearms and ammunition and the prevention of armed violence. Among the main results that we have reached, I have to highlight the assistance and certification of more than 95,000 weapons and 219 tons of ammunition seized that were obsolete, as well as the training of more than 4,000 officers of the armed forces and police in key issues related to the supervision of weapons and ammunition, including physical security, arsenal management, and marking and destruction. Today's gathering is a clear showmanship of this commitment. This space allows us to spread good practices and experiences, and at the same time to explore new synergies to strengthen the national capabilities in the struggle against the illegal trafficking of firearms and ammunition. I want to express my thanks to UNIDIR and EMET for accepting our invitation and sharing their valuable experiences in this workshop. At the same time, I want to recognize very sincerely the work of my team, particularly the PACAM and the IADB, for the organization of this event. And finally, I want to urge once more all the countries in the region to take the maximum advantage of the technical assistance that we place at your disposal through the PACAM. From the OAS, our commitment is very clear. We will continue at your side in the challenge of reducing the threat and to destroy illegal weapons for the security of the Americas. With these remarks, I formally open this seminar. Thank you very much. After our presentation message, our first speaker is Janaina Omeri. She's a specialist in the program of assistance for the control of weapons and ammunition known as PACAM. Her work has been key in the performance, design, and the implementation of regional initiatives to support member states to face the challenges in the control of weapons and public security. We invite Mrs. Omeri to share her perspective on the regional context of cooperation and assistance in the management of weapons and ammunition in face of the regional threats of public security of the OAS. Please, Mrs. Janaina. Thank you very much. I have a message that I cannot turn on the camera because the organization does not allow it. Can you support me with that, please? Thank you. We will proceed to verify that. Yeah, thank you. Can you share your presentation in the presentation mode? Because it's in the moderator mode.
Un momentito. Tampoco, no se ve, ¿verdad?
En la parte donde dice Display Settings, ahí le van a aparecer distintas
Display
formas.
Settings.
Si le pone Duplicate, quizás le sirva.
Please duplicate.
A ver.
Ahí se no, ¿ha funcionado?
No,
Is it working?
se duplicó su segunda pantalla.
Only your second screen.
Si gusta, de igual manera tenemos la presentación de usted.
We have your presentation. I think that we have them on the screen already.
Otra vez en modo diseño.
It's in design mode. I'm going to take it out. Can you support me, please?
Muchas gracias.
Deme un minuto nada más.
Just a minute.
Nosotros proyectamos desde este lado la presentación que tenemos.
We're going to project
Gracias,
the presentation for you.
Teniente, si me permite, ¿puedo yo apoyar a la colega Omerín? Me parece que ya ven la presentación.
Muchísimas gracias, señor. Muy amable.
Thank you very much for
Señora
supporting her.
Janina Homerin, por favor, si es
Janina
tan amable,
Homerin,
¿ya alcanza a ver a usted la presentación?
Can you see the presentation?
Sí, muchas
Yes.
gracias.
Muchísimas gracias. Entonces, puede usted continuar cuando se
You
sienta
can
lista.
continue when you feel ready.
Muchas
Thank you.
gracias. Gracias también, Juan Carlos,
Thank you, Juan
por el
Carlos,
apoyo. Si
for
puedes
your
pasar
support.
a la próxima, por
If you
favor.
can just
Bueno,
give me the next slide.
es un gusto
Well, it is a
estar
pleasure
otra vez en
to
esta
be once
oportunidad
again
del taller
in this opportunity in the
organizado en
workshop organized
Madrid.
together with the
Yo soy de la
IADB.
sección
I am
de
from the section
armas convencionales
of
y
conventional
explosivos como
weapons,
lo
ammunitions, and
señaló
explosives,
el
as
teniente antes
Lieutenant
de abrir. Y
told you
quisiera un poco
before. I
hablarles
would
del
like to
marco
talk about the
actual
inter-American
del
framework to
combate,
prevent and
comercio ilegal
combat the
de
illegal
armas y toda la
marketing
asistencia
of
posible que
weapons and all the
por
assistance
parte
that we
de
have
la OEA
to give by the
para
OAS.
primero unos datos de
First of all,
contexto.
some data
Bueno,
for the context. I'm going to
el secretario
look at
Marcos
this
ya los
quickly
apuntó.
because
Tenemos todavía
we still
una tasa
have
nacional de
the
homicidios alta
highest
y
rate of
es
homicides
tener en cuenta
in the
que
world, and
2/3 de estos
2/3 of
homicidios
these
son
homicides are
armas de
committed
fuego,
with
que 8 de
firearms,
los 10
and
países con
8
las
of
más
the 10
altas
countries with the
tasas de
highest
homicidios alta
rates of
están en
homicides are in Latin
Latinoamérica,
America and the
que la tasa
Caribbean,
de resolución
and
de
that
estos
the
homicidios
rate of
solo alcanza un
resolution of these
5%,
homicides is
con lo
only
cual
25%,
tenemos una
with which we
situación
have a
de
situation
datos que
of
todavía puede
data
ser
that can be
muy subnotificada.
very
Además de eso,
under
sabemos también que
notified. So we
el
also know
organizado
that
transnacional
organized
sigue siendo una de
transnational
las
crime
principales amenazas a la
continues
seguridad
being
de
one
los
of the
países de la
greatest
región.
threats for the security
Tenemos
of the countries
entre
of the
América
region. And we have
Central y
in
América
Central
del
America
Norte
and South
principales
America the
destinos
main
del
destinations
tráfico de
of the
armas a
illegal
nivel
trafficking
global.
of
Pero
weapons at
además
the
se
global
suma a
level. And
eso que las
besides, the different
modalidades de tráfico
modalities of
practicadas por
trafficking
los grupos
practiced by
criminales
the criminal groups
se acumulan,
are
ya sea el
accrued.
narcotráfico, trata de
Drug
personas,
trafficking,
minería ilegal,
trafficking in
etcétera,
persons,
con lo
illegal
cual
mining,
la
etc., with
situación
which the
se vive
situation of the
de
violent
manera
cycle
desproporcionada.
is fed
Entonces, en
back.
ese escenario,
So in this
vemos la
scenario, we
importancia de
see the
contar con
importance of
herramientas
having
de coordinación
tools for the
intrarregional
coordination among
con
the
aliadas
regions
para
that
abordar
can
estos fenómenos de la manera
support
coordinada.
to face this phenomena in a coordinated way.
En esa perspectiva,
And under this
de contexto,
perspective of the
algunos
context,
desafíos
some
comunes
challenges that are
son
common to the region
más
that
específicos
are
al
more
combate de
specific to
armas.
the control of
Primero
weapons.
tenemos una
First, we have
situación en
a
que vemos
situation in
algunas
which we see
debilidades
some
en términos del marco
weaknesses in
normativo,
the
brechas en
legal
términos de
framework,
legislación que pueda
gaps in
regular todo el
legislation that
ciclo
could regulate the whole
de
cycle
vida de las
of the
armas
life of the
convencionales, pero también
firearms
hay
and
legislación
ammunitions, and also
que
legislation
no
that many
alcanza
times
la situación
does
de las
not
nuevas
reach
tecnologías. En
the
particular,
situation of
estamos
new
viendo a
technologies.
situaciones en
Particularly,
los
we see the
países
situation in which
circulan
countries
armas
circulate
que
weapons
se han
that
producido a través de
have been
impresiones
produced through
3D o
3D printers,
artesanalmente, para
or
el cual
that
el marco normativo
the
todavía no
legal
tiene
framework
disposición.
does not have any
En
provisions.
materia de control de
And with
fronteras,
the
muchas veces se da la
control of
situación de
borders,
que no
we
hay
have
suficiente
insufficient
capacitación
personnel, and
para la
also the lack
capacitación
of training in
específicamente en
the
regulación de armas.
regulation of
Se
firearms.
observa muchas
We
veces
have
también
observed many times
constante en este aspecto
at the same
falta de
time
herramientas de
the lack
comunicación
of
eficaces entre
communication
las
tools
autoridades
among
con
the
respecto a las
different
licencias y las fuerzas de
authorities
seguridad.
and the security
Se
forces.
observa también un
And we also
tercero
have a third
componente
one
importante que son
that is important,
deficiencias
which
en
is
materia de
the
gestión
deficiencies in
de
the
armas, municiones y
management of the
explosivos,
cycle of life
por lo
of
cual se
weapons, ammunitions, and
necesitan
explosives,
muchas
with
veces
where we have identified
fines
some
o condiciones que no son adecuadas
inefficient
para la
practices
seguridad
or
y gestión de estos arsenales,
inadequate
lo cual puede
security for
permitir
the management of
favorecer
these arsenals
situaciones de
that favor
corrupción,
situations of
hurto,
corruption,
robos y etcétera.
robbery, etc.
También existe una
And also,
situación
there
de
is a
ausencia de
situation of
protocolos
absence of
para el
protocols
rastreo y la
for the
identificación de armas
tracking
de fuego y municiones
of
recuperadas.
the
Y muchas
recovered
veces también
ammunitions
los
and
países
firearms, and the countries
apuntan que retrasos
say that
en
there
la
are
destrucción
delays in the
de arsenales
destruction of the
destinados a
arsenals that can generate accruals that favor the criminals
un
as
cuarto
well.
componente
A
también
fourth component
vulnerabilidades
of
identificadas que tienen que ver
vulnerabilities
con la
that have been
investigación
identified
policial
had to
y la
be
fase de
have
persecución penal.
with
Muchas veces hay una ausencia de
police and
investigación
the
del delito
prosecution, because
específicamente. Muchas
there
veces
are
se
routes for the deviation,
investiga el homicidio,
and
pero no el arma con el cual
For instance, they investigate the homicide, but not the weapon with which the homicide was committed, and there is a lack of channels for the communications among the different police forces. These are the things that the countries tell us, and many of the countries have police forces with different corporations, with which this is a situation that we see in many of the countries. And this situation, in a general way, help for us to find us in a gap of knowledge. We don't have the complete information with regards to the points of deviation and routes and MO of the criminal groups. And all the panorama shows that this absence of data and information that is specific harms us, for us to be able to base our strategies and better strategies to face the problem. In face of this scenario, what resources do we have available and that for the countries? As the Secretary Marquez mentioned, well, the CIFTA, the Inter-American Commission Against the Manufacturing and Illegal Trafficking of Weapons, Ammunitions, Explosives, and related issues is the main one. It's the main convention that gives us legal support to advance in this topic. It is an instrument that is legally binding, and we have gone beyond this by developing operational tools that can support the countries to incorporate the provisions of the CIFTA to their legal national laws and implement their effectiveness. And the hemispheric study on this that is derived on the decisions of implementation of the CIFTA. Beyond the CIFTA, the OAS also promotes the regional coordination and interagency coordination through some initiatives due to the roadmaps, as Licenciado Marquez said, but also through the mechanisms of communication on illegal transfers, and that we will see in a while, and the tracking for the exchange of information. And as the Secretary mentioned, the program for assistance for the control of weapons and ammunition also provides training and operational assistance to strengthen the capabilities of the member states to face this phenomena. I'm going to see this quickly because it was mentioned by the Secretary, but the CIFTA has a double purpose. First, to establish that its objective is to impede and eradicate the manufacturing and trafficking of weapons, ammunition, explosives, and also related materials, but also establishes another objective, which is complementary, to promote and facilitate the cooperation and exchange of information and experiences among the member states. So we see that in a general way, the provisions are crystallized around some objects. First of all, the criminalization of some contexts, specifically the manufacturing, trafficking, and also the attempts to manufacture illegally, and the provisions with regards to establishing and strengthening the control of the cycle of weapons and ammunition, making weapons marking mandatory, also the registry of information from the production, and the convention stresses on the fact that the production of information has to maintain itself through time in order to allow to favor the exchange of information. So it's not just a matter of producing, but to maintain and be able to disseminate the information with regards to the registry of weapons and ammunition. Some provisions, well, the last component on this slide, besides these issues of control of the life cycle of ammunition and weapons, the CIFTA also has some articles to strengthen the control of borders and to advance with regional cooperation and the exchange of experiences for the prevention, detection, tracking, research, investigation, and the prosecution. And as I said before, besides the provisions of the Commission, OAS has advanced with some operational tools to favor the member states for them to have instruments that will allow them to incorporate the provisions of the CIFTA in their legal national frameworks. And with this, they adopted some model laws. And I'm going to mention two that have to do directly with today's topic. The law that establishes the strengthening of controls and the points of exportation, and also the measures of security to eliminate the deviations and losses. Likewise, these operational tools have some guidelines and manuals with guidelines for the implementation of the provisions of the CIFTA. And here I highlight the model regulation for the control of international trafficking of weapons, its parts and components and ammunition. I invite you to access these materials through the QR that you see on the screen. Beyond the provisions of the CIFTA and also these operational tools, it was decided at the consultative committee of the convention to develop what we call the hemispheric study on the illegal trafficking of firearms and ammunition. This is a permanent effort to generate information on this phenomena, and they established through a methodology that is modular and innovative that has been financed by Mexico until now, and we are looking also for additional funding to be able to advance with the different modules of this methodology. There base question, how to prevent the illegal marketing of firearms and its components and parts. And we have 5 modules to detail better each one of these aspects. I invite you to be able to see the last communication that was made, Module 4, on the trends and threats related to the trafficking of weapons and ammunition in the Americas. And at this moment, we have then the support of Mexico, but also with the technical support that you will see here in this workshop to advance with the second module that is oriented to mapping all the state capacities. To advance with this, we are developing a questionnaire with regards to the provisions of the Commission, and we hope that everything will be ready to be launched in April next year, so that we can then advance with the mapping of the organizational structure that is available in each country. And through this questionnaire, we can evaluate the level of maturity of the management of the weapons and criminal justice, considering the benchmarks that we established internationally. I want to say that an important characteristic of this action is that the questionnaire, and therefore the response to the questionnaire, is given through a digital platform that is going to be launched quickly, that is called the Platform on the Knowledge of Firearms, or AFK-CIFTA. Here, I present some screens of the ACAPE. We have the provision of the platform that will be launched in the next weeks. First of all, it is a centralized repository on weapons and ammunition in all the American continent. It has 2 areas, one that is public and the other one is private. The public one, first of all, can present a digital library that will facilitate the access of the set of documents related to this topic in the management of weapons and ammunition. These can be documents that are inter-American, but also documents of interest that can be published at the global level. In this public area, we are also going to develop some interactive panels that can be presented in an aggregated way with all the information that is going to be informed by the countries in the private area. And with this, I talk more about in this area, the countries will be able to enter the response to the questionnaire of the SIFTA. And with this, each country will be able to distribute users that are decentralized and maintain the historical of the information in one same platform. Through this information that are loaded by each country, the platform can generate reports so that we can have them visually, even the graphics that will allow us to have a regional panorama on the implementation of the SIFTA and of all the provisions and good practices, international good practices in this matter. Privately, we want to also facilitate a forum of discussion among the competent authorities in this subject matter and to have an updated directory of contacts to favor the cooperation among pairs and the exchange of information. As the Secretary mentioned, I would like to talk to you about PACAM. That is the Program for the Control of Munitions and Weapons, and I invite you to navigate in the web page of PACAM through the QR on the screen. And this is a holistic program developed by the OAS to support the member states in the reduction of armed violence with a focus on demand, but also on the disposal of weapons. 5 action points. First, legal assistance so that to strengthen all the legal frameworks of the country so that they can be adequate to international standards and to be able to respond to the challenges of the control of weapons and ammunition. The second one has to do with technical assistance and the strengthening of capabilities to develop technical competencies in the management of the life cycle of weapons and ammunition and the tracking of weapons. And the third component is related to the trans-border coordination to implement mechanisms in the region against illegal trafficking. The fourth one is dedicated to favor the resilience, community resilience, and reduce the vulnerabilities of the local people in face of armed violence. And finally, the fifth component that is oriented to favor regional coordination and to develop and implement action plans and sub-regional tools like the roadmaps that we're going to be talking in a few minutes. PACAM has received funding from the European Union since 2019 and continues receiving it, and also has funds from Italy. Up to now, 29 countries have been benefited by the technical assistance provided by PACAM. Visually, here you can see some examples of the type of assistance provided by PACAM.
Estos son algunos de los resultados alcanzados en cada uno de
These are the results.
En beneficio del tiempo,
in benefit of time, I'm going to jump this information because it was mentioned by the Secretary in his initial remarks. But likewise, this information will be available for you to access them in the presentation. It is important, as was mentioned, to understand that in the catalog of assistance that PACAM can provide the countries, we made an effort to produce information as well. Here we have the platform on knowledge on weapons and firearms that is going to be launched very soon, but the SAM system that my colleague Ohana is going to be talking about in a few minutes is already an operational instrument that is available for the states. And it is oriented to the control of inventories of weapons and ammunition. I'm going to jump this chart because she's going to talk about that. And with regards to regional coordination, as I mentioned, we have many lines of action. We have a recent line oriented to favor the tracking and cooperation for the exchange of information that we're developing in collaboration with Interpol, through some workshops and operational trainings. The second line of action has to do with the development of communication mechanisms for the region on the legal transfers of weapons and ammunition, to strengthen the controls and the processes of international transfer. And it is important to understand that this is a commitment that was undertaken at the inter-American level and also at the global level through the adoption of the free trade for weapons. And this roadmap is one of the products in which we promote the different implementation. And the leadership, we have been the leaders in the implementation of the roadmap and in Central America and the Dominican Republic. Well, the mechanism of communication on legal transfers, where does it come from? We did a regional mapping with which we identified some features in the region. More than 80% of the countries request more sound tools to supervise the international transfers and improve communication. 63% lack direct communication channels with their foreign parts. 82% did not share information on the negation of licenses, so the risk analysis that we could have at the regional level was harmed. And 75% does not notify the other countries with regards to the revocation of licenses. And the transit countries of these transfers depend mainly on the transporters to obtain information. Half of the requests for confirmation of the reception of transfers remained without answers. So the problem in general was that it was necessary to improve the supervision of legal transfers of munitions and weapons, and to find a communication channel that is direct and rapid with the possibility to triangulate the information and have a contact with the customs. With the OAS has developed the MCTA, that is a digital platform for the exchange of information. It's a voluntary platform that will allow the authorities of member states to interact in a fluid, rapid, and efficient way, and in a safe way with their pairs in imports, exports, and transit of weapons and ammunitions and their parts. The functionalities of this mechanism are many. First of all, the one that is more highlighted are the notifications in real time on the expedition, denegation, revocation of licenses, but also the emission of receipts. And we can also formulate alerts and exchange information, and we are developing a repository on risk management. I remind you that this is a voluntary tool, so the countries will have the option to exchange information on risks, as we mentioned, on cases of deviation that they observed, alerts on routes, illegal routes, illegal, not legal, and the licenses that have been denied for different, and the reasons for their denial, and also to share lists of forbidden operators. So the architecture of this mechanism has been developed by PACAM. It is a system that is decentralized with data encryption, and only the countries involved in the transfer will have the password to access the information. And this key will be for each one. This mechanism comes after 2 years of designing the methodology, accompanied by the countries that are at the consultative committee of the CIFTA. and the pilot will be launched next year.
No sé cuánto tiempo me queda.
I don't know how much time I still have.
Más deprisa.
Carmona, cuenta todavía con unos 3 minutos más
You
para el
have 3
desarrollo
more
de su
minutes
tema
for the
antes de pasar a
development of
preguntas y
your
respuestas.
topic.
Gracias. Solo mencionarles
I
que
just want to
para que el
mention that
mecanismo
for the mechanism
de comunicación
of
pudiera
a communication
funcionar,
to work,
se identificó que los países
it
necesitaban
was identified that
que
the
las
countries
informaciones estuvieran ya
and had information that were
digitalizadas
digitalized
y accesibles en
and
una plataforma
accessible
con
in
lo
a
cual
platform
se
with
desarrolló
which
el Sistema
we
Nacional de
developed a
Licencias para
national
apoyar
system for
el
licenses to
esfuerzo
support the effort of
mecanismo
building the
de comunicación.
mechanism of
Eso
communication.
voy a saltar porque
I'm
mi
going
compañero
to
Juan
jump
Carlos
this
Melgar
because
ya
Juan
les va
Carlos Melgar is
a
going
manera
to
más
explain
detallada
this
el
in
Sistema
more
Nacional de
detail.
Licencias. Siguiente, por favor. Vamos a saltar esto, la licencia. Bueno, las hojas de ruta, entonces.
Well,
Son
the
un instrumento de
roadmap
coordinación
are
regional. Les
instruments
mencionaba
for
que
regional coordination. It is a governmental strategy that is dynamic and participative and is oriented towards actions coordinated among all the key actors of the country, be them the national authorities in the management of arsenals, but also we can think about institutions that have a relation, like the operational institutions of justice and customs authorities, etc., etc. What is the added value for these roadmaps? Well, one of the main ones is that the priorities are defined by the governments and can be translated into concrete objectives and goals in order to operationalize the commitments undertaken at the global level. And also as an instrument for coordination allows to renew the national and institutional architecture in a way to coordinate efforts among institutions and institutional communication among the different stakeholders that have a role to perform in this phenomena. The third added value that is important is that through the roadmap and the visibility that is achieved with this adoption, we can also have the increase of international cooperation, be it through the visibility of the topic and the actions of the government, or also through the strategy for the mobilization of resources to advance in the combat of the trafficking and proliferation of weapons and munitions. And generally speaking, there are two large phases in the elaboration of a roadmap. First has to do with the development approval, which is a phase that is absolutely owned by the countries, and the phase that we just entered with the roadmap of Central America and the Dominican Republic for the implementation. This goes through the planning at the national level of the sections that are prioritized for the translation of these commitments undertaken at the sub-regional level from the local specifications, and goes also through an important effort of monitoring and evaluation. I mentioned that up to today, the OAS has implemented the roadmap of the Caribbean, and we have, together with the partners of UN level, we have provided the roadmap of Central America, and we're in dialogue with other countries to identify interests and needs. I invite you to take knowledge of the roadmap of Central America and the Dominican Republic. Here we have the four main axes, strategic axis of action. And it is a holistic approach from the organization and strengthening of the legal framework to the life cycle of the weapons, going through prevention, but also including collaboration with other institutions, as I mentioned before, customs and the judicial system, the public ministry, and even within public institutions and private institutions that can have relevance, such as the different courier companies, because we're seeing that they disassemble these weapons and ammunitions into their parts and send them through couriers and mail internationally. And to end, I just want to stress on what I mentioned at the beginning, which is the component of tracking of firearms that we're developing in cooperation with Interpol. Especially this week, we are carrying out a workshop, a regional one in Colombia with Interpol, to prepare an operation that can advance on this topic. So the gaps that exist in the different tracking systems and in the management of information limit the capacity of the authorities in an equal way to detect the patterns of trafficking and the MO of the trafficking, to prevent the deviation and to recover the weapons efficiently. So we're advancing in 4 fronts. First, in the development of protocols for recovered firearms through the different procedures and standards and the practices of tracking, and also in the development of capacities with an initiative, a pilot initiative for next year that includes the individualized assistance to a country that is going to be selected. And we also advance in regional cooperation, as I mentioned, in these seminars and workshops that are at the regional level to favor the exchange of information and the contact among pairs, and in the generation of intelligence to facilitate the elaboration of intelligence reports that can support and orient the investigations of the police and operations. And here I stop. Thank you very much, and I'm at your disposal for your questions.
Thank you, Danana, for your topic and for being so professional during your presentation. I would like to share with you one of the questions from our users' YouTube channel. Mr. Carlos Ramirez said the commitment of all states is very important. We do agreements and treaty to control or neutralize this scourge. What can we do to prosecute these criminals? We would like to hear your answer. Thank you for the question. The prosecution, in the end, it goes beyond the technical assistance that we can provide for states through CIFTA. First of all, through the convention, which is the legal instrument that guides the prosecution, and it's more related with the legal framework of each country. Therefore, we would have to look at each country individually, and states must have a specific action. And I think that the approach is very interesting. And through the roadmaps, we want to start with work of coordination with the institutions that are part of the justice system, but also working with the prosecution. I believe that the first step that we could take is to establish consistent communication in these forums to ensure that we can work together. I totally agree, and thank you, Ms. Homern, for your answer. Thank you. We now have the participation of Mr. Theo Bajon, investigator in UNIDIR. His experience includes an analysis of disarmament policies and institutional strengthening in international security. Mr. Bajon will present the global framework to manage conventional arms through a life cycle. Mr. Bajon, you have the floor. Thank you.
Señor Bajón, si no se alcanza a escuchar. Creo que su micrófono todavía está bloqueado.
I believe your microphone is on mute.
Sí, está.
Ahí lo escuchamos fuerte y claro, muy amable. ¿Puede usted continuar cuando se sienta listo, señor Bajón?
Perfecto,
You
muchísimas
may
gracias.
continue when you're ready. Thank
Buenos
you.
días, distinguidos
Good
colegas,
morning,
excelencias.
all
Soy Theo
colleagues.
Bajón, investigador
My name is
del
Theo
programa de
Bajon.
armas
I
y
am a
municiones
researcher
convencionales del Instituto de las
from
Naciones Unidas de
UNIDIR.
Investigación sobre el Desarme. El objetivo de esta
The
presentación
objective of
es
this
presentar el marco
presentation
global para la
is
gestión
to
de las
talk about the
municiones
global
convencionales durante
framework
todo el
to
siglo
manage
XX. Sus
conventional
objetivos
arms
es
throughout the
la
life cycle, the
estructura, pero
objectives and
también
the
los
structure,
principales
but
resultados de
also
la reunión
the
preparatoria
main
de los
results of the
estados que
preparatory
se
meeting
celebraba
of the
en junio
states
de 2025 y
that took
cómo
place
la
in June
nueva guía
2025
voluntaria
and
que
how the
fue
new
aprobada
voluntary guide
a nivel nacional y regional
speaks
de
about the
manera
national and regional
Esta
implementation in a
sesión
practical way.
informativa se
This
presenta bajo los auspicios del
information
Instituto de
session
las
is
Naciones
sponsored
Unidas de
by
Investigación sobre el
the
Desarme en estrecha colaboración con
UN
los
in
socios
close
técnicos
collaboration
con el
with
fin de apoyar la
technical partners
investigación
with the
basada
objective
en
of
datos
supporting
empíricos,
research
el desarrollo de
based on
capacidades
empirical
y
data,
las
capacity
herramientas
building,
prácticas para la
and
gestión de
practical
municiones
tools
convencionales
to
a lo
manage
largo de su ciclo de
conventional
vida. El
ammunition
Instituto de las
through
Naciones
the
Unidas de
life
Investigación
cycle.
sobre el Desarme, para ser breve, UNIDIR, es
UNIDIR
una institución
is
autónoma dentro de las
an
Naciones
autonomous
Unidas que
institution
lleva a
within
cabo
United
investigaciones
Nations
independientes
that
sobre los retos
does
mundiales
independent
más
researches
acuciantes
on the
relacionados con el desarme, pero
global
también el control de
challenges
armas
that
y
are
más
related with
generalmente la
arms
seguridad
control and
internacional.
specifically
Durante
international
45
security.
años, 45 años,
For
hemos
45
desarrollado
years, we have
ideas
developed
innovadoras para abordar los
ideas that are
problemas de
innovative
seguridad
to
más
address
acuciantes de nuestra
security problems
Nuestra
that
experiencia
affect
en
our world.
investigación
Our
abarca
experience
retos
in
complejos de
research
forma accesible y
includes
promueve un diálogo
challenges
inclusivo
in
para
an
encontrar soluciones
accessible
creativas
way
y
and
eficaces.
fosters
Nuestro trabajo
creative
tiene como
solutions that are
objetivo
effective.
sentar
Our
las
work has
bases
the
para una
objective
acción
of
colectiva significativa
creating the
hacia un
foundation
mundo
for a
más seguro.
collective solution towards a
Para
more
que todos
secure
sepan
world.
qué vemos en qué orden, voy a presentar el marco
I
y
will
el plan de la
now
sesión.
speak about the
Primero,
plan for this
repasaremos
session. First, we
brevemente el
will
contexto y
briefly
los hitos
review
que
the
nos
context and the
trajeron hasta aquí.
milestones
Después
that brought
explicaremos el
us
proceso
here.
del
Then we will
grupo de trabajo
explain
de
the
composición
process
abierta y
of
sus
the
principales resultados.
OEWG and the main
Luego
results.
introduciremos el marco
Then
global
we
y
will
su
introduce the
propósito
global
dentro de
framework
esta
and the
agenda
purpose
y a continuación
within this
detallaremos
agenda,
el
and then
objetivo
we
general
will
y
speak
la
about the
estructura de
general
varios
objective and the
componentes.
structure in different components.
También presentaré los resultados clave de la
Also, I
reunión
will
preparatoria de
present
junio
the
2025 con
key
los
results
puntos
of the
más
preparatory
importantes que
meeting
surgieron de
of
esta
June
reunión.
2025
Y
and the
cerraremos
main
con
points of this meeting,
orientaciones
and we will
prácticas para la
close with practical
implementación
guidelines for
con
the
la guía
implementation
voluntaria desarrollado por
with a
UNIDIR y
voluntary
otros
guide developed by
socios.
UNIDIR and
Con
other
este
partners.
recorrido se busca ofrecer
With this
una idea
overview, we
clara
would
de
like to
dónde
offer a
venimos,
clear
qué
vision
contiene
of
el
where we're
marco
coming
global
from,
y
what is
cómo se
included in the
aplicará,
global
cómo
framework, and
evaluará
how
en
can
los
this
próximos
be
meses
applied
y
and how
años.
this will be assessed in the next months
Para
and
situar
years.
brevemente el marco, en la década
The background. In the 90s,
grupos de expertos comenzaron a abordar
expert
la
groups
munición como un
started
desafío
to address
específico
ammunition
relacionado
as
con
a
el control de
specific
las armas
challenge
pequeñas.
related with
En 2001, el
small
programa
arms
de
control.
acción promovió
In
compromisos mundiales,
2001,
aunque aún no se abordó
there
plenamente
were
la cuestión de la
world
munición.
commitments,
Y el
even though we
Instrumento
didn't speak
Internacional
specifically
de
about
Rastreo de
ammunition.
2005 excluyó la
And
munición, pero desencadenó un proceso separado
we
y desde
started a
entonces
separate
las sucesivas
process.
reuniones del
And
programa de acción
then the
han hecho
other
referencias explícitas
meetings have
a la
made
munición
specific
y
reference
que han
to
impulsado un enfoque
ammunition, which
integral.
has promoted a
Desde
comprehensive approach.
2005, la Asamblea General
Since
abordó en
2005, the
repetidas
General
ocasiones
Assembly
los riesgos
addressed
que
in different
entraña la acumulación
meetings
de
the
municiones
risks
convencionales.
of
En 2008, un
accumulating
grupo de
conventional
expertos
ammunition.
parlamentares
In
concluyó que
2008,
las
an
explosiones
expert group
imprevistas en los
concluded that
depósitos de municiones se debían a prácticas
unforeseen
de gestión
explosion in
inadecuadas y
arsenals was
recomendó que
due
las
to
Naciones
the
Unidas
inadequate management and
proporcionaran
recommended that the United
orientación
Nations
técnica
would
centrada
provide
en los aspectos de
technical
seguridad
assistance
primaria,
focused
lo que
on
ayudará
security
en
aspects
2011
first.
a la
So in
elaboración de las
2011,
directrices técnicas internacionales
The international technical guidelines on ammunition were started, and also safeguard program from United Nations that we will speak about this later on during this presentation. In 2020 and 2021, a new government expert group concluded that the risks for security and protection had to be addressed in a comprehensive manner throughout the life cycle, the manufacturing, storage, transport, but also transfer and use, and final use as well. This was a foundation, so the working group was able to create the global framework, focusing on security, but also including sustainability. The OEWG, created after Resolution 76233 in the General Assembly, had 4 periods of session in 2022 and 2023 and approved the final report without vote and recommended the global framework. And this was approved with 7847. This is then a comprehensive instrument. The objective has 3 main pillars. First, prevent the diversion and illegal trafficking of the use of ammunition, mitigate and prevent explosions, and also contribute to lasting peace and security through sustainable development. The structure includes a forward and principal guidelines, specific agreements on cooperation and international assistance, a cooperation framework that includes follow-up and review, and an annex that explains the basis for the 15 objectives of the global framework, as well as all the measures. The framework includes all types of conventional ammunition, applying an approach that includes the whole life cycle, starting with manufacturing, storage, relocation, transportation, as well as recovery, disposal, or final use. It includes 15 objectives and 85 specific actions designed to promote security, sustainability, and management throughout the life cycle of conventional ammunition. The first objective, the first group, speaks about the improvement of norms, guidelines, and best practices, cooperation and international assistance, and support to regional and sub-regional mechanisms, as well as capacity building that are long-lasting to guarantee that the reforms stay valid in time. The second group speaks about protection, and these groups, the sustainable surveillance with structure, procedures to reduce risks, and a solid management of inventory, and also record keeping, which are fundamental factors to prevent instability and accidents that are potentially catastrophic throughout the logistic chain. The third group is about security and promotes transparency in the supply chain to minimize and mitigate the risk of diversion. It speaks also about transfer through certification for final use, but also this group prioritizes on denying access to conventional ammunition that is stored, abandoned, and without cleaning, also improving the marking and tracing. finally fosters a voluntary information exchange about diversion and efforts to recover ammunition, creating a database through the data analysis and recovering data. And finally, cross-cutting objectives. The objectives incorporate gender approach and include equal and full and meaningful participation of women in management of ammunition throughout the life cycle. It also fosters cooperation among stakeholders. These perspectives improve the understanding of risk and the effectiveness of the application. The states are committed to cooperate and coordinate their work, and also to strengthen alliances, design national points of contact or determine points of contact, and exchange lessons learned as well as information. And it can also request or provide assistance depending on the needs and priorities that have been identified. The framework establishes a global system programs, a list of experts, periodic updates of the international ethical guidelines on ammunition, including the new security components and also a new scholarship program from the United Nations to work on better capacity in the region. Follow-up includes a preparatory meeting of states, which took place in June 2025, voluntary initial summaries, and an update before the meetings of the member states, periodical meetings of states according to what they decide, and technical expert meetings, which will provide a predictable cycle for dialogue on implementation and a peer exchange to correct the path. Let me make a pause here to share with you a publication from UNIDER that recovers practical observations collected from the existing reports of conventional arms, and the objective was to prepare everyone for the meeting in June, and the objective was to be an input for the meeting. The document is available on UNIDER's site, and it identifies the needs, lessons learned that can facilitate a common format and also that can be comparable and finally useful for the states. And this was related to the meeting in June 2025. Starting and after this meeting, they established the meeting for 2027. A project for a structured program around the objectives 1 through 15, and a president from South Africa was appointed, and vice presidents. The format includes
con el mandato de adoptar en 2027 un resultado sustantivo que completa
significant result that includes feasible decisions. Include a template for work initial summaries in 2026 and also the presentation of reports every 2 years starting in 2028, and also the support of the Secretariat to analyze. Safeguard will provide the assistance. And for follow-up, the state meetings will take place every 6 years. 2 technical meetings of experts will take 5 days in New York, and the topics will be confirmed in the meeting of 2027. Speaking about the implementation of a global framework, the voluntary guide was developed together with UNODA, UNIDIR, EMAT, and CARA, and it was presented in June 2025 as part of the preparatory meeting for this global framework. It translates the 15 objectives into practical actions throughout the life cycle and offers a non-binding guidance that is easy to use with case studies and practices that can be verified and step by step. The chapters detail each objective with a justification, the enabling measures, ways of application, and additional reading. The voluntary guide is aligned with policies, norms, training, and also tools, including the offers of safeguard, and provides practical content on surveillance, reduction of risk and traceability, and transparency, control, exchange of information, and the integration of gender approach, everything to reduce the risks of diversion and also to prevent the misuse of conventional ammunition in general. In conclusion, the framework establishes clear political commitment and a cycle to review it. The results of June 2025 established the modalities and also are moving towards the meeting in 2027. And this becomes a bridge between policy and practice for defense authorities, security authorities, and also regulatory institutions. All resources of UNIDIR and complement these efforts with research, diagnosis, reference tools, and support and training support. Also, the collaboration with regional organizations such as OAS is helpful to translate the framework and other instruments in roadmaps for the region, as we said, and national actions, including the Americas, where national authorities can take advantage of these instruments. I leave with you my contact information. Please do not hesitate in contacting us if you need additional information or for any other questions.
Muchísimas gracias a usted,
Thank you,
señor.
moderator. Thank you, Theo.
And
I would like to share with you one of the questions that we have received.
Por ahí para mantener alerta a la persona que se encarga de la traducción. La pregunta viene por parte
The question is from Joel
Es un juez jubilado del país
He is a
hermano de
retired
Haití.
judge from
Su
Haiti.
pregunta es,
The question is,
me pregunto qué pasa después
I
de la
wonder what
munición
happens
incautada. ¿La
after the
destruyen
ammunition
o la
is
usan para
seized.
las
Is
fuerzas
this
públicas?
destroyed or they use it for
Señor
law
Theo Bajón, ¿sería
enforcement?
tan amable de podernos
Theo,
compartir su punto de vista?
could you please
muchísimas
share with us an answer?
Gracias, muy amable.
If I may, as the question was asked in English, I'm going to respond in English as well. No, I think the question is a very interesting one, and you have several ways to see it. I assume the context in which such an ammunition has been recovered is from the illicit sphere, as I think it was intended in the question. So, for example, law enforcement authorities recovering or seizing any type of ammunition. I think there's been different context, and of course, in terms of safety and in terms of security, the IATGs, the international technical guidelines that I mentioned in my presentation, are usually giving a lot of recommendations regarding that. And one of the recommendations is not to reuse such an ammunition, as it is, of course, an explosive weapon, and it is an explosive object and item, which might be very compromising in terms of safety from that side of things, particularly with such an ammunition that has been recovered from the illicit sphere. But all of that is included in the International Technical Ammunition Guideline, and I encourage you to have a look at these. They tend to have a very specific indications and specific recommendations based on different types of context. I know this is something that has been done for weapons specifically, but regarding ammunition, usually the recommendation from international technical guidelines are not to reuse such an ammunition. I hope it answers the question. And happy if there's any other question. Thanks.
Thank you so much, sir. I completely agree with you with that. It all depends on the context, as well as you said. So thank you so much for your participation, sir. We will continue with the other people. Thank you so much. Como acto seguido, damos la bienvenida
Following, we
al señor
welcome
Javier
Mr.
Now we
Javier
are going to
Garcia
welcome
Jimenez,
Javier Garcia
who is the
Jimenez,
technical
who is the
advisor
technical advisor
in the team
in
for
the
the management of ammunitions of
team
UNODA, with
of
ample
UNODA,
experience in the
with great
development of
experience in the
legal
development of
frameworks and
regulatory
technical
framework and
tools.
technical
His
tools.
work
His
has
work has
contributed to
contributed to
strengthen
strengthen
international
international
cooperation
cooperation
in this
in
subject
this
matter.
subject.
Mr. Garcia
Mr.
Jimenez will
Garcia Jimenez will
give us the
speak
global
about the global
framework and the
framework
tools of the
and the
United
tools that
Nations for the
UN offers
management of
for the
weapons and
management of
ammunition.
arms and
Mr.
ammunition.
Garcia,
Mr.
the floor is
Garcia,
yours.
you
When you're
have the
ready,
floor.
good morning.
Hola, muy buenos días.
Good morning,
Estimados señores generales,
dear generals
oficiales
and
superiores, damas y caballeros.
officers and gentlemen. Thank you very much for allowing me
dirigirme a ustedes
to address you.
el motivo
And the reason and the order of the presentation is the objectives within the global framework of the security of the ammunition, and objectives number 5, 6, and 7 that my predecessor said are the objective 5 is the surveillance, and 6, the process of reduction risks and the use of ammunition, and objective 7, the management of inventories and the maintenance of the records.
No sé si se... Perdón, pero no me deja pasar. Deme un segundo.
I can't move the slide.
Ahora.
Just give me a second.
Bien,
Well, with regards to the ammunition security, it is clear that within the use that we give to ammunitions, there are always going to be accidents, both in the manufacturing and as well as in maintenance and storage. Some accidental or provoked accidents might occur, and also the use in exercises might end up in an accident, and also in the final destruction to reduce stocks, some accidents might occur as well. The threats that we are subjected, both the military and police personnel and the security forces and civilian elements, can suffer damages, and also the facilities of the military or any facility that is near the accident, or civilian structures as well. I'm going to explain the technical directives of international ammunition technical directives and for the support tools in the page of the UN. As my predecessor said, from 2008 on, and the report of the General Assembly of the United Nations, looking at the growing problems in the accrual of and the storage of ammunition, conventional munitions, and that many accidents occurred, thought that something had to be done. So they created a work group that gave some recommendations, and they created these technical directives, and especially the program called INSAFORGAT, IATG, with the documents and the tools that I'm going to present and talk about here. The main areas of coverage of the directives, IATG, are defined from the storage of ammunition, which is the fundamental practice to avoid accidents. And the management of munitions included inspection, surveillance, and test, and the maintenance and repairs. The accounting of the stocks of ammunition to know exactly what part of ammunitions are within the correct use and which ones should be destroyed or moved to another level. The demilitarization and destruction of ammunition and the security in storage and transportation of the same. The purpose of the 7Gs. The 7Gs are not standards, binding standards, international binding standards. No, they give us the best practices at the global level of the different states that have proceeded to carry out different trials to stock and use and manage all the ammunitions that our governments give us in the best way possible. They have been developed to help us from the manufacturing to the final disposition. And they give us also a lot of ideas and standards and legal frameworks for us to be able to establish national standards and norms, always to help and support the states in all the development of these processes and procedures. Here you can see within the page of ONUDA the different chapters that we can find with regards to the 7Gs. Unfortunately, the Spanish, Russian, and Portuguese version is version 2 and 3 in English, French, and Arabic. We're going to have the new versions at level 4, and we will try to be able to have them in all the languages so that they can be easily accessible for all the public. With regards to objective number 5 and 6, we have already spoken of, but they're very well related. 6 is the reduction of risks and is defined because we have to assume a risk, because the government of our states is going to give us some ammunition and a mission, and we have to define which are the acceptable risks. So the 7Gs give us the tools so that we can inform those the decision makers on what is the acceptable risk or what can be undertaken. We have implemented security precautions, basic ones, especially for civilian communities, to reduce any death or injury. And we have talking about the potential causes of fires that can be produced by these detonations. And so that and the manipulation, atmospheric effects, the implementation of basic precautions on security to reduce theft. Also, if we have implemented some basic security precautions in the as a distance, adequate distance in all the tools, this is called quantity distance, which is the relationship between the distance of the explosive stored or to be destroyed or the explosive that we want to transport. So with our tools, we will always have this amount distance that will measure what is the sphere or the way or the percentage of the risk undertaken and for the use of better end of mission. The ammunition has been counted by amounts And we have established a basic system to identify thefts and losses. We have to implement some standards and to be able to know at any moment what amount of explosives we have, and if it is in accordance with what our government has given us. And we have to carry out a minimum investment of resources in the organizational development of operational procedures and infrastructure. As level 2, we always improve. We have implemented risk division, separation, and distances of the appropriate amounts, that amount and distance, and then we have to see the compatibility. Each risk group is going to give us an effect from group 1, which is a mass detonation, to group 2, which is a great projection of shots and a high risk, and number 3, a risk of fire, and group 4, although there are munitions, and we could use it with other storages if they're not dangerous. And logically, at the moment in which a detonation occurs in a storage room, in a boat or any infrastructure, there's going to be the destruction of the facilities and the elements. If it's in a vehicle or something, that is going to also cause some other injuries. So according to the amount distance, we can reduce the risks and the effects on civilians. The ammunition can be identified by the lots. Logically, for greater management within the surveillance processes, we have to have every ammunition marked. We have to differentiate them by caliber, lot, and above all, by the years of service, in order to be able to carry out this maintenance and manage the life cycle better. And an investment of resources at an organizational level and the technical capacity of our staff. As we advance in level, the basic level, our staff has to get to know the ammunitions, and level 2, the staff has to know how to manage and improve maintenance of that ammunition. And in level 3, the organizational capacity to manage the resources, and also the surveillance tests have to be defined. So everything has increased for what? To improve the efficiency within the storage, management, and transportation, and reduce the risk. The tools that we have within the programs of UN Safeguard, the AMAPT, which is the advisory team in ammunition management in Geneva, is part of the Office of Disarmament of the United Nations. Here you have the founders, and what do? We dedicate ourselves to give technical support, instructions, and support to all countries that need technical directives or the management in their standards, or even technical surveillance in their storage rooms to see if they agree with the standard. And we also give support in explosive phenomena. Many times, and God will, this does not happen, and the country that has suffered it requests the fast response team of the Demining International Center to help us and prevent any other or further accident. The technical tools. We have the checklist for risk reduction, the quantity distance map, which is the best tool to be able to improve the security of our facilities, the estimation of explosion damages and destruction, and also if there is an explosion within the storage rooms, the limit license of the explosives that will limit the amount of explosives that can be stored at the deposits, and the distances to reduce the risk for civilians or infrastructures, and then some other technical calculations like work approach for the GOD's teams, and to organize the destruction from level 0, which is what is that I need, materials, vehicles, staff. All this is within these calculators. Here you have on the screen the map of quantity distance. You can see that they come in different circles of different colors. And for the information, it is great. In this, you can see that the green circle is the minimum distance that has to happen in the roads that are important for the infrastructure. Everything within the green circle is going to be affected. So I have to reduce that amount of explosives so that it does not affect the routes, of the storage routes, and also evacuation routes. I can have a highway near, but we need this evacuation route not to be destroyed. So in case of more explosions, my emergency services can always have the support and give support to the civilians. The yellow line is the distance to inhabited buildings. Logically, the military facilities assume the risk, and we assume that someone is going to die or suffer because of the shock wave, and that we might have casualties. But we cannot allow any casualty in the civilian infrastructure. The civilians cannot receive any damage due to the explosives that we have in our storage room. So the yellow line is always going to limit the distance to which the civilians facilities have to be placed. And it's also a safeguard within a new storage room to see the minimum distance from the civilian population. And I have to place all the fences and the limitations of the storage deposit. And vulnerable buildings are all those buildings that I consider to be of very high vulnerability. For instance, hospitals, schools, and churches, malls, and maybe if there is a concert going on near my military facilities, then this mark is the one that limits that risk that I have to undertake in case that we have an explosion. Here you have the license for the limitation of explosives tool. It allows me, together with the groups of compatibility and danger, to know the maximum amount that I can store by deposit of ammunitions with effect to the deposits that I have nearby, to know what is the maximum amount that I can put in each one of these risk groups. This explosive license varies if it is superficial or underground. They vary radically, especially in the amount of explosives that can be stored. We have some other support tools like the implementation tools and the self-evaluation tools. They allow me in a basic training to give a verification of the tool of understanding and strategies and verifications and the training that is needed, especially for the management of the storage areas. And what would be the effects that could be produced in the different deposits. Here we have the capacities within the 7Gs, as well as the technical reviews of the 7Gs and the testing part. So these are the packages. We have different packages and different courses that can be seen in different languages. Within this platform for the management activity platform, this is the main page where you can sign in and you can prove what you can see the courses and the development of the different publications that are on the Yamat page within the central page of Geneva. Well, with this, I finish my presentation. It's been faster because my colleagues just covered a part of it, of the global framework of ammunitions. You have my contact here, and I will be very pleased to be able to answer any questions that you might consider timely. Thank you very much, Javier Garcia. Very useful, your topic. I would like to share with you some of the opinions that were shared in our YouTube channel, and as well share with you the questions that some people from different countries have asked, just to alert the translators in English to be aware of this. One of the first questions is by Mr. Jorge Francisco Girón Mendizabal. He says, according to the level RRPL, this is concentrated on the management of the cycle of munitions and explosives and firearms. How do you verify the final disposal of the material that has been destroyed? Well, it is a very good question. Every time that I start to explain my students what the life cycle is about, the first thing that I say that it is an equal triangle, and in each one of the vertex you have the life of the ammunition. If I expand one of the vertexes, it is not the same. Then the final disposal, there always has to be by staff that is trained, staff that has been already trained. This varies a lot within the countries. There are countries that directly say that it has to be the armed forces, and other countries says the police. Or even with regards to explosives, civilian explosives like in mining, and since they're very specific explosives, it's got to be staff that is specifically trained for that. So each one of the status has to, in each one, the staff that is going to be in charge of the final disposal has to be already predefined. Thank you. With this, you answer one of the other questions by Mr. Carlos Ramirez. He says, it is a very important topic, this of security and transportation of weapons and seized weapons and ammunition. The question is, what to do, what do the states have to do to standardize laws in face of the leaks or theft of material? As you said, this is a problem that encompasses each one of the civilian authorities and military authorities. Am I correct? Yes. Every time I try to manage my trainings, I always tell them that they have to support themselves on civilian protection as well, both doctors and firefighters, because when we destroy weapons, sometimes there may be a spark and it starts a fire, and we have to know how to put out a fire and what they are going to see. So I like to encompass all the forces of security of the state within a final disposal. Everybody. Once again, thank you very much, Javier. And the last question, we will conclude this area of questions and answers, and we will have a break that will conclude until more or less 11 o'clock in the morning, that we will start with our next presentation. So the last question is a generic question by a colleague of the Dominican Republic. He says, José Rafael Paulino Hermosen, Lieutenant of the Police of the Dominican Republic. He asks, what use of life has a projectile? He doesn't specify the type of projectile, but if you can give us a general response? Correct. Well, it all depends, as we have said, of that triangle, but especially the type of explosive that it has inside. It's not the same a projectile of a trivita, or because the trivita can be 30, 40, 50 years, and I can give... we have some projectiles of the Civil War, of the Spanish Civil War, that in the year 36, and they're still available, and their explosion is very complicated. So it depends on many factors. For us, it is an objective of surveillance and maintenance within the first framework, like testing and maintenance of ammunitions. It has to be a visual test first. What I see, what I smell, and what I touch. Everything that results strange for me is strange for the ammunitions. And that chocolate color of the projectile, that sweet smell, these are decompositions. So that tells me this ammunition is not okay. The next step would be the chemical analysis and analysis of the experts that can tell me that it can be still used, or if we have to destroy that ammunition. But within the level 1 to level 3, we start with the 1, what I see, and then specialized chemicals 2, and the projectiles are not in the good shape 3. Thank you very much for your knowledge in this topic. So with you, we say goodbye to this to this first part of the. And now, thank you not only for allowing me to give my presentation. I know that Spaniards speak very fast and it's complicated, but thank you. So this break is going to be great to rest from my presentation. Thank you. So we're going to thank all the civilian and military staff that accompanies us through YouTube. Please, this is just a few minutes of break and we continue at 11. Thank you very much and have a good day. Empezamos a carcajear, porque era, les digo, ni que fuera de plata para que anduviera por todos lados. Es del dólar City. Esperando que les íbamos a regalar un salero para la mesa. Cada vez que venía el mesero a traer el salero, que lo matábamos. Total, de que terminó.
Nuevamente, muy buenos días a todos. Gracias por
Good
continuar
morning to all
acompañándonos
again.
en
Thank
este
you
seminario de
for
gestión de armas
joining
con el
us
tema
on
Buenas
this
prácticas
seminar of
y
arms
herramientas de apoyo
management with
para
the
la
topic of
gestión
best
de armas y
practices and
municiones.
supporting tools for arms and ammunition
Nuevamente les hacemos la
management.
cordial invitación a todos aquellos que nos observan
We
en nuestro
would
canal de
like
YouTube en los
to
distintos idiomas
encourage all our
de
viewers
continuar dando sus
from our
comentarios y
YouTube
preguntas que
channel to
aquí se estarán
continue
ventilando.
asking
En caso
questions
de que
and
nosotros no
adding
abarquemos las
comments.
preguntas dentro
In
del
case we're
tiempo de
not able to
exposición,
answer all
de
the
todas
questions
maneras se les
during the
están haciendo
presentation,
llegar
we
de manera
are
personal a cada uno
going
de los
to
ponentes para
send
formulación de sus
this to
respectivas
each one of the
respuestas.
speakers so that they can
Entonces,
answer the
nos
questions later
encantaría
on.
continuar con
So we would
la participación y sobre todo
really like to have your
que el personal
participation.
que vive en Brasil, habla portugués, también
And
compartan
if
sus
there
opiniones
are
para poder
people in
nosotros
Brazil
desarrollar
that speak
respuestas en ese
Portuguese,
idioma.
still go ahead and ask
Sin más
the
por el momento,
questions.
vamos a presentar a nuestro
Without
siguiente
further ado, I would
ponente
like to
en nuestra
introduce
cuarta
our
ponencia
new
del día.
presenter, our fourth
A
presentation
continuación,
this day,
daremos paso al capitán de fragata del Estado Mayor
Commander
Técnico, Genki
Genki
Álvarez
Alvarez
Chamba,
Chamba.
jefe del Departamento de Depósitos
He
Conjuntos
is
del
Chief
Basjar
of
de la
Joint
Armada del Ecuador.
Storage Facilities,
Su
Bashar, from
experiencia en la
the
gestión
Ecuadorian
operativa
Army.
y
His
logística
experience in
le ha
logistics and
permitido liderar
operations management
procesos de control y
has
almacenamiento
allowed
de
him
municiones
to
en su país,
lead
con una
control
proyección a nivel
procedures
regional.
in his country.
Nos
And this
compartirá
is at
las
region
buenas
level. So he will
prácticas del
share with
Ecuador
us
en
best
procedimientos de
practices from
gestión de
Ecuador
municiones
in the
y su
procedures to
potencial
manage
aplicación regional.
ammunition and the
Adelante, mi
possibility
capitán.
of
Muy buenos
applying
días.
this in the region.
Buenos
You have the
días,
floor.
muchas gracias, Teniente Carmona.
Thank
Es
you.
para mí un honor y privilegio
It
de
is for
compartir con
me an
ustedes
honor and a
en
privilege
nombre
to speak to
de
you
la Armada
and
del
on
Ecuador,
behalf
del
of
señor
the
comandante
Ecuadorian
de la base naval
Army
de
and
Jaramillo,
the commander
darles un
of the
cordial saludo a
Navy
los
base of
distinguidos miembros del
Jaramillo.
Comité Interamericano de
Greetings
Defensa,
to
a los
all
invitados
members of
especiales, estimados
IADB,
expositores,
special guests,
y a todas las personas que nos acompañan en
speakers,
este
and
seminario de
everyone that
gestión
is
de armas.
joining us in
Deseo
this
compartir el avance y las buenas
seminar,
prácticas en materia de administración segura y eficiente
sharing
que
best
tenemos en el
practices,
tema de la munición, un aspecto fundamental
a
en la
fundamental
seguridad nacional de mi
aspect
país. Para lo
in
cual
the national
voy
security of
a
my
subir
country.
la
And for this,
presentación
I will now
para
start with my presentation.
me confirma por favor, Teniente Carmona, si se ve la presentación.
Can we confirm that you can see my presentation?
La vemos claramente, señor, en modo presentación, sin novedad. Puede usted continuar cuando
It
lo
is
desee.
clear.
Listo.
We can
El
see
tema a
it. You can
presentar es
continue.
buenas prácticas en
The
materia de
topic that I will
procedimientos de
present
gestión
is
de las municiones
best
en Ecuador
practices
y su
in
aplicación
management procedure
para lo
for
cual voy a
ammunition in
utilizar las
Ecuador
siguientes
and the
una
applicability
introducción,
in the region.
una gestión
First
de
of
la
all,
munición
we
en
will
Ecuador en lo que tiene que ver
speak about it in
almacenamiento,
introduction,
manipulación,
the
control,
management of
empleo,
ammunition in
mantenimiento,
Ecuador,
seguridad y
storage,
vigilancia y la disposición final.
manipulation,
Luego hablaré
control,
del proyecto más
maintenance,
importante
security, and
que
final
tuvo el Ecuador o
disposal,
tiene el Ecuador
and
en lo que es protección de la población civil
the
relacionado
project
con
of
los depósitos de
protection of
munición.
civil population
Posteriormente te
regarding the
hablaré de la
storage of
cooperación
ammunition.
internacional,
Later on,
algo
I
muy
will speak about
importante que ya
international
lo
cooperation, which
tocaron
is very important, and
expositores
previous
presentes.
speakers already
Y
spoke about
finalizaré
this.
con unas
And
conclusiones.
finally, conclusions.
La introducción. En
Introduction.
nuestro país, las Fuerzas Armadas
In our
almacenaban las
country,
municiones en
the
respectivos
Army
bodegas o refugios,
stored
los cuales
ammunition in
no guardaban las
warehouses
normas
or
técnicas
shelters
adecuadas.
that did not have
Entonces,
the
esta
adequate
munición
technical
quedaba realmente al
regulations.
ambiente
So
de la región donde se tenía esa munición, lo cual no era las
this
condiciones
was
adecuadas.
left to
Ya lo
the
tocaron en los temas
environment,
anteriores.
which was definitely
Producto de esto,
not the right
consecuencia,
condition. As a
hemos
result,
tenido en
as a
nuestro país
consequence, so
alrededor de
we've had
3
in our countries
explosiones
approximately
accidentales
3 accidental
en
explosions.
las investigaciones que se realizaron,
And during the
todas era
investigations,
por la conservación de la munición.
this was due to the
A partir de ese
storage of the
momento comenzó
ammunition.
un plan de capacitación
Then
y
a training
reconocimiento al
program
personal militar en
started
el manejo
to
de
provide
armas de
understanding
munición
in the management of ammunition, which is an important factor to preserve and store these objects. And we created our regulatory framework based on the international guidelines and also the national to create the internal guidelines for the Army. The management of ammunition in Ecuador. As previous presenters already mentioned, the important part is the storage, manipulation, control, maintenance, and security and surveillance. For this, what we need is staff, specialized staff. They have to know about ammunition, different calibers, special ammunition. They also need to know about the legal framework and the technical characteristics that they must take into account, as well as the procedures to deliver, transportation, and finally the disposal. We will speak about the ammunitions in our country. In our country is divided in higher caliber, less than 20 millimeters, and larger, greater caliber. And we also have missiles and torpedoes, which are special ammunition that this includes specific components compared to regular ammunition. Regular ammunition has explosive charge and the propeller, which are the most important parts that we will have contact with, because this is where we can see the condition or the requirement to preserve this ammunition in the warehouses. So we will start with an acquisition, a procurement from a company that manufactures, and they provide the life cycle, the shelf life. And this is very important. As the previous speaker already mentioned, ammunition has a life cycle, and this is provided by the manufacturer, and this also depends on the preservation conditions, the storage conditions of the ammunition. The technical information is say that it's between 10 and 15 years, depending on the chart, and it also includes the technical data that is written on the packaging. They include weight, compatibility, risk factors, and everything that we need to take into consideration to store this ammunition depending on the compatibility. Then, after we store the ammunition, we need to preserve it. This is where we have staff that is responsible for ammunition. They need to preserve the storage conditions. For us, we have an average temperature of 25 degrees Celsius, which is the adequate temperature for ammunition, and humidity 70%. Additionally, I learned in an internship in Brazil. They have vasos testigos. This is where they place the powder of a projectile, and that vaso testigo is saved and stored with them. And they see how it degrades or how it transforms its chemistry as years go by. Then the final stage, this is when the ammunition that has been used either for training or for different operations, even operations that are done jointly with other armed forces, we come to 1 or 2 years before it's the end of the life cycle. There are chemistry tests using microcalorimeters, and a test that is also done, which is a burning when we demilitarize. And we also have ballistics. These are used to verify how operational it is. Once we are done with this phase, we get to the final stage according to the different characteristics, conditions, and all the tests that have been made. There is a moment in which this ammunition is obsolete and has to be disposed of. storage and manipulation of ammunition. We follow international guidelines such as the documents provided by UN, NATO, Department of Defense of the United States, and the European Cooperation Office. We use IATG, and for Air Force, we use international AFMAN 91201 and Yellow Book from DOD, our national regulatory framework. It is included in the Constitution of Ecuador, the COIP, Public Service Act, LOCGE, and the Act about manufacturing, importation, export, selling of ammunition, explosive, and accessories. We also have NTE-INEN 2216, and this is related to transportation, manipulation, and management. Our Army has that Directiva of Comaco, Bunker 4. This is for administration custody of firearms. In the storage, we use the internal regulation for the security of all this equipment. We try to focus on the compatibility of this ammunition and the risk, which is a factor that we consider in the storage and management. The control of the ammunition, these are the scheduled inspections that we carry out. We count, we verify. This is maintenance and operations. These inspections are made every month, quarterly, and also yearly. There are non-scheduled inspections. We also do these in order to monitor and keep random control of the storage and what we have in these warehouses. This is the Army forces. These are the requirements made by the Army. And for this, we have internal procedures so that we can deliver or receive this equipment to staff, because they are not trained. We have trained people that are in the warehouses. We go ahead and training on security procedures in order to be inside the warehouses when they are going to take the ammunition with them. Regarding security and surveillance, security is an automated systems that we have in warehouses where we have all the ammunition. We have temperature control, humidity control. We also have control against virus and also lightning. And regarding security, we have video surveillance. This is a CC system verifying everything that goes on around the warehouses. We have access control. As you know, it is necessary to have restricted access, and this is not offered to everybody. It's only for the staff that has a document that is going to take some of the ammunition with them. And finally, key control. This is a control that we have to keep monitoring of the keys. I will speak about the Project Protección de la Población Civil, and this started with an initiative where we had a context. We had accidental explosions between 2000, 2005, or 2006. We had two significant explosions, and civilians were affected by these explosions because they were close to these warehouses, and these warehouses did not have the security distance spoke about the previous presenter. And this project was started to protect civilians. This was presented in 2008. We planned this to the Secretariat of Planning and Development in Ecuador. It was presented as a priority project for the country. And by 2011, once this was approved, and after the building process took place, we started with Jaramillo warehouse and Corozo. That is called the Gamabe. Between 2013 and 2014, we also started with the Del Sur warehouse in order to store the rest of the ammunition, depending on the location of these warehouses. Up to 2021, this was the responsibility of Comaco. However, in 2021, there was a modification made. The administration went through a modification, and this was given to each one of the branches. So it was to the Army, to the Air Force, and so on. And this is how we became responsible of each one of the warehouses, maintaining the standards, and we follow all regulations. I will speak about the Jaramillo warehouse, which is my responsibility. I'm the head of department, and the basic objective is to maintain all the equipment, and we need to ensure the preservation of the material that is inside. And this is to reduce the risk to affect staff. This is the organizational chart. We have a commander. We have two different departments, one that is ammunition storage and maintenance. This department is responsible for control of inventory, inspections, delivery, and neutralization. And for this, we have EOD staff responsible for this task. Speaking about maintenance, we have preservation, electronic security, and against the fires. This department is responsible for the test, and it's important to highlight we have this division where we have staff that is prepared in order to respond in case we have a fire. Jaramillo is located in the province of Manabí, and the area includes administrative area, storage, and disposal. This is an image to the right where you can see the infrastructure. Just like Hamabe, Jaramillo warehouse, where they're identical really, and Del Sur has the same construction, but they have less ammunition. The tasks that are done in the warehouse are storage, transportation, they get it ready, and then they deliver. International cooperation of the armed forces. And here I have MAC because this is an NGO. And this is an English, an American institution, is here since 2020, working together with the armed forces to strengthen capabilities in order to store ammunition, the physical security of infrastructure, and facilitate the disposal of obsolete ammunition. How do we do this? This is through the practices and different seminars, like the operator of special machinery. This is used for the transportation. Also, we have support from them in order to improve physical security, the preservation, and if it's necessary, dispose of the ammunition. Additional to this, we have international cooperation based on MOUs of chiefs of staff. We have agreements with different countries and cooperation programs that are also between nations. Regarding international collaboration, we have, as I mentioned before, the NGO MAG, and we have worked with MBDA from France. According to what I heard from the previous speakers, I would have to add here PACAM and UNIDIR, because they are institutions that can help us and cooperate also to improve the maintenance and preservation standards as well as disposal standards. What I wanted to include also in my presentation is that we need to have a community. And I heard Mr. Bajon saying that there are meetings going on between countries in order to verify and monitor the status of ammunition and arms in different countries. However, I wanted to propose the creation of a community similar to what we had from the US for countries that had torpedoes as part of the arms and ammunition that we had in Ecuador. This community, I'm sure that it will include best practices in how we manage ammunition and explosive, and surely it will strengthen knowledge and experience and lessons learned in order to improve and always strengthen these capabilities. This is what we're looking for. What we do as part of our tasks in Ecuador, the three branches and their corresponding warehouses, we must always remember that our first mistake is our last mistake when we speak about ammunition. And this is a brief video.
Finalmente voy a terminar con las conclusiones.
Finally, some conclusions. Ecuador has made significant improvements in a regulatory framework and specialized technical guidelines. This progress was based on the need to mitigate risks linked to accidents and proliferation of these arms. The knowledge, continuous training, and professionalism of the military staff responsible for ammunition management are fundamental pillars to ensure the adequate preservation, management, and disposal of these materials. We have a comprehensive project of a joint storage, and this includes administrative areas, storage, and disposal under strict controls of surveillance. The interinstitutional cooperation among armies, civil organizations, NGOs like MAC has definitely strengthened the logistic capability and the technical capabilities to ensure a secure management of ammunition. Experience and protocols that have been developed are a point of reference that can be applied in other regions. With this, I would like to thank for your attention. This is how I conclude my presentation. This is my contact information in case you have any questions. Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias a usted, mi capitán Jenkins.
Thank you, Captain Jenkins. As a matter of fact, I would like to take this opportunity to share one of the comments that we have from our YouTube channel, Mr. Carlos Ramirez. He says the following: excellent presentation, very practical and complete. Thank you for sharing our knowledge. And for this, I would like to reiterate, thank you, all of you joining us in our YouTube channel. Thank you also for sharing all of your comments and opinions, because this is helpful for these topics. We have two questions that we would like to ask.
Una de ellas
One of
es
these
la siguiente.
is the following.
Dice, a ver, por parte del señor Juan Carlos Ovalles
Juan
Liriano.
Carlos Ovalle Liriano is
pregunta
asking this
dice,
question.
¿Puede una munición explotar aún si
Can
tiene
an
muchos
ammunition
años,
explode
más de
even
50 años,
if it
y
has
llega a ser
over
encontrada por los
50
civiles?
years
¿Cuál
and
sería su
if
recomendación?
civilians find it?
Mi
What would be
capitán
your
Jenkins, lo
recommendation?
escuchamos.
Commander
Claro,
Jenkins, you
dentro
have the
de
floor.
eso,
Yes, of
esa munición
course.
que se encuentra siempre, se puede decir perdida o en algún
Maybe this
lugar que
ammunition
no
is
es un
lost
reparto de una
or
institución militar
placed
o un
somewhere that
depósito de
is
munición.
they're
Normalmente
not
se
in a
los
warehouse,
conoce, se
not
los
in a
establece
military
como UCS.
base.
Entonces,
These are
tipo de
usos, and
procedimientos ya se los realiza con el
the
personal especializado, en este
procedure
caso son
is
EOD,
carried
los
out by
cuales tienen que
EOD specialized
ver la
staff.
forma de cómo eliminar o destruir esa
They
munición en
find
ese
a
estado en
way
que
to
está, ya que
dispose
no se la
of
puede
this
manipular
ammunition.
por
It cannot be
el tiempo
manipulated.
o los años que tiene esa munición en esos estados. Recordemos siempre que la
Let's
munición,
always
la parte
remember
más importante es
that
la
the most
conservación.
important
Son las
part of
condiciones
ammunition is
ambientales, tanto
conservation,
temperatura,
preservation, the
humedad,
environmental
que deben ser
conditions
unas
such as
condiciones
temperature and
adecuadas.
humidity.
Sin
These
embargo,
have
esa
to
munición
be
que se encuentra,
adequate
ese uso que
conditions.
se
But what we
encuentra
find, the
algún
ammunition that we just
terreno
find
vacío, tiene
in
que ser
any
inmediatamente
empty land has to be
destruido
immediately
para
destroyed
seguridad tanto de la población
for
que
the
está en
safety of
alrededores
the
como de
civilians
personas
that
que
are
van a
around
realizar
and also the
esa
staff that is
intervención o esa
going
operación.
to work with this ammunition.
Completamente de acuerdo con usted, mi capitán. Muchísimas
Totally
gracias por su
agree,
opinión.
Commander
¿Le
and
parece?
Captain. Thank
Continuamos
you
con
for
la
your
segunda
opinion.
pregunta,
We
y
have a
es
second
más
question,
enfocada a uno de los temas que
and
usted
this
mencionó
is
respecto a un proyecto. ¿Nos podría
regarding
hablar un poco
a
más acerca de
topic of
su
the project. Could
propuesta
you speak a
de
little bit
comunidad
more
de
about your
ordenamiento de munición y
proposal of
explosivos? Mi
community
capitán, adelante.
to
Sí, haciendo un
organize
símil,
or
como ya lo
regulate?
manifesté en mi presentación,
As I said
ya
in my
el torpeo MK-46
presentation,
que lo manejó
the
Estados
community of
Unidos,
torpedoes
hubo
that
varias
was handled by
reuniones que
the
se
United
hacían
States, and we
cada
had
año,
different
pasando
meetings
2
each
años,
year
es lo mismo que se tiene que
or
hacer
every 2 years. It's the
aquí
same
en
thing
el
that we
tema
need
de
to
lo que es
do
municiones
here.
explosivas. Es muy importante
It is very
conocer las
important
experiencias,
that we
las
learn
experiencias que
about
tienen
the
diferentes países
experiences that
con
other
respecto a esta
countries
situación.
have
De hecho, hay
regarding
países
the
que
situation. As a
comprueban
matter
que
of fact,
estas
we have experiences.
explosiones accidentales que se han
We've
producido
had
que nos dejaron
accidental
lecciones allí
explosions, and
los
we
diferentes
have
países.
lessons learned in
En
each one of the
Ecuador
countries.
fue
In
así.
Ecuador,
Producto de estas
this was
explosiones
the
nació
case.
este
As a
proyecto de la
result
población civil
of these
que les comenté
explosions,
en
we
la
have
presentación
this project
y
to protect
prácticamente
civilians,
la
and
cooperación internacional se vuelve un punto tan
international
importante para
cooperation
poder
becomes
hacer
such an important
transferencia de
point
conocimientos y
in order
fortalecer
to
especialmente
transfer
lo que
and
es
share
conocimiento y
knowledge.
experiencia. Entonces, esa es mi propuesta.
And
Sería muy
this is my
interesante.
proposal.
Veo que
It would
sí lo están
be
haciendo.
interesting, and I
Escuché
believe some are doing it. I
expositores anteriores
heard the
que
previous
decían que
presentations,
PACAM
and they
también está haciendo
said
una
that PACAM
comunidad,
is
que
also
UNIDIR
creating a
también está
community.
llevando reuniones,
UNIDIR is
pero
also
debería materializarse esta
leading
comunidad para
meetings.
poder
This community must become a
traspasar o
reality in
intercambiar
order
información
to
de interés
exchange
y conocimientos que nos
information
va
that is
a
of
todos ayudar a
interest for all,
fortalecer
and also knowledge.
este
This will
tema de lo que
be
es municiones
helpful
explosivos y su conservación,
to
obviamente.
strengthen our capabilities
Nuevamente,
in this
muchísimas
topic.
gracias, mi capitán. Y de
Once
hecho,
again,
quisiera
thank
volver a
you,
reiterar y
Captain. I
enmarcar
would
el
like
eslogan que
to
usted mencionó acerca del tema de
highlight
los
what you just
explosivos,
said about
donde indica
explosives.
usted que
You
ahora
very
sí que
well
un
said that
error con los explosivos puede ser el último.
our
Entonces,
first
eso nos
mistake with
da
explosive
el
could
énfasis
be our
necesario
last.
para
This
saber
is
cómo
why
tratar
we
el tema de
must
los explosivos
emphasize
vigentes
and
y vencidos.
we must
Muchísimas gracias,
ensure
mi
that we
capitán.
treat
Si
them
no tiene usted
adequately.
inconveniente, continuamos
Thank
entonces
you.
con
We will
nuestro
now
programa de ponencias.
continue
En
with
esta
our
ocasión vamos a
schedule.
tener a dos
We will
presentadores
now
que vamos a presentar a continuación.
hear from
Gracias, mi capitán.
2 speakers. Thank you, Captain.
Muchas
Seguidamente,
gracias.
seguidamente recibimos a la señora Patricia
Now
García
we have
y
Patricia
posteriormente al señor Juan
Garcia
Carlos
and
Melgar,
then Juan Carlos
ambos
Melgar.
representantes del
They
Programa de
are both
Asistencias para el Control de
representatives
Armas y Municiones,
of
también conocido como PACAM.
PACAM.
Ellos representarán las herramientas,
They
ellos nos presentarán las
will
herramientas
speak
tecnológicas de
about
PACAM,
the
entre
technology
ellas
tools of
el software de
PACAM,
control de
among them
inventarios
the
y el
software
sistema
to
de
control
transferencia, que
inventory and
apoyan
the
de manera
transfer
concreta
system
a la gestión
that
eficiente y
support the
segura de
efficient
las armas y municiones.
management and the safe
Adelante, por
management of
favor, señora
ammunition.
Patricia, si es tan amable.
Patricia,
Muchísimas gracias.
you have the floor.
Disculpe,
Thank
sí,
you. Can you hear
solamente
me?
que todavía tiene en
Sí,
modo
sí.
edición su presentación.
Sí. Bueno,
Disculpe usted la interrupción. Puede
no se
continuar cuando
preocupe.
usted lo
Muchísimas
desee.
gracias. Muchas gracias. Muy buenos días a todos o muy buenas tardes en alguno de los países de la región. Para mí es un gusto poder presentarle una de las herramientas que tiene el PACAM de la OEA a la disposición de los estados y que ya hizo una breve introducción mi compañera Yanaína al inicio referente a estas herramientas. A mí me tocó presentarles el sistema de inventario de armas y municiones. Voy a ser breve ya que tenemos poco tiempo, dos expositores. Voy a hacer una breve introducción, hablar un poco de los objetivos de SAM, algunas pantallas y algunos requerimientos técnicos para poder instalar SAM. Hemos denominado SAM al sistema de inventario de armas y municiones, que se creó como una respuesta a un requerimiento planteado por diversos estados miembros de la OEA, y el propósito del mismo es poder contribuir con una gestión de inventario que sea eficaz conforme a las buenas prácticas internacionales. Este fue desarrollado en casa, es decir, bajo la asistencia técnica para el diseño por personal del PACAM, y en el marco del proyecto Contrarrestando la Proliferación Ilícita y el Tráfico de Armas Pequeñas, Ligeras, entre paréntesis APAL, y Municiones y su impacto en América Latina y el Caribe. Dentro de uno de los principales, digamos, objetivos que está ahorita llevando en ejecución el PACAM a través de la tercera fase, podemos encontrar que SAM surge de la parte, digamos, de seguridad física y gestión de arsenales. Es una herramienta que facilita el tema de la gestión de inventario, ¿verdad? Para llevar la contabilidad. El objetivo de SAM o el objetivo de SAM es poder contar con una herramienta sencilla que proporcione a las instituciones de gobierno, poder controlar sus inventarios de armas y municiones. Fortalecer esas capacidades técnicas y operativas de los estados para garantizar un mejor manejo en cuanto al tema de la gestión de almacenamiento y control de las armas de fuego y municiones convencionales. Algunas características de SAM. Bueno, SAM es un sistema de multicapa basado en web, es decir, el usuario ingresa a SAM a través de su navegador, ya sea Microsoft Edge, Chrome, Mozilla, dependiendo del navegador que utilice. No es necesario instalarlo en todas las máquinas de los usuarios, está centralizado. Usa español e inglés, es totalmente gratuito a todos los estados que lo soliciten, y utiliza software de código abierto. ¿Qué significa esto? Que fue creado basado en software que
It was
no
created
tiene un
based
costo,
on
digamos,
software that does
adicional, como
not
puede
have an
tener
additional cost,
otros, por ejemplo,
such
una
as
base de datos tipo
other,
PostgreSQL,
like a database that
comparado,
is in
digamos,
SQL,
con
or compared
Oracle, que es,
with
digamos, tiene un
Oracle
licenciamiento
that
muy
has
costoso. Entonces, tratamos de no
very
heredar a los
expensive
estados
licensing.
costos
So
adicionales para compra de
we try to
licenciamiento
avoid
que vaya, digamos, a
stressing states
incrementar
with
lo
additional
que son
costs that would
sus costos
increase
ya
their
o tengan
costs.
relación con este software. Contiene
Anything
una descripción
related to the
física,
software, it also has
ubicación,
the
estado,
physical
entrada y
description,
salida de las armas y
location.
municiones. Ya luego les voy a explicar qué son las entradas y
I
qué
will
son las
explain
salidas.
about the
SAM fue desarrollado
income and
basado en buenas
outcome.
prácticas sobre inventario de
And this
armas
was
y esto
based
siguiendo los
on good
lineamientos de la
practices
MOSAIC
on
y del
arms
estándar internacional
inventory. This is
IATG, el
following
cual ya
Mosaic
muy bien
and
lo describió el señor Javier
IATG,
de
which
Amat
was
en su
described
presentación anterior.
by Javier
Y
from
sigue SAM
AMAT
estos
in the previous
lineamientos, ¿verdad?
presentation,
Sobre
and
la
it
parte de
follows
gestión de
these
inventario.
guidelines about inventory
Esta es
management.
la estructura
This
que
is
usa SAM,
the
es decir,
structure
en
used
un
by
bien
SAM,
empaquetado viene lo que es la parte,
and
digamos, del aplicativo con la base de
this is
datos
the
y el inicio del
application
sitio
and the
web.
link with
Y el usuario
databases
puede
and web
ingresar
services,
desde
and the
su
user
navegador,
can
ya
go
sea a través de
through
una
the
a través
browser,
del internet,
log
ya digamos de
using
manera pública
internet.
o en una red
It
interna o
can
llamada
also work
intranete. Entonces,
on intranet.
esta sería la estructura, es muy
So this
simple,
is the architecture is really
no es
very
tan
simple.
compleja, ¿verdad? Algunas, quisiera mostrarles
I would like to show you the SAM structure. This is a general overview so that you have an idea of this. SAM has 5 main tabs, and the first one is the homepage, which is just information. We have a module of arms that speaks about inventory. This is where we can keep the inventory, all movements, everything that is done internally in the warehouses. We have assignments. This is a very small module. It can be assigned to agents, to officers, and this can be a dynamic thing. There are countries that have their own assignments. Once the officer or the agent leaves the academy, they assign a weapon to them, and they will use it for their entire service. Or there are countries that use it, they do it dynamically every day, meaning that they assign different arms depending on the schedule that they have. Also, here we have a record of all maintenance provided to the weapons. Of course, it can be just oiling them, or some countries change non-essential parts of the weapon that will not change the mechanism of the weapon. This is linked to legislation. There are countries in which their legislation will not allow them to do these repairs. So there is a module so that it can keep record of this. We also have incoming and outgoing. We have an inventory of ammunition. It can be a minor caliber and conventional or high explosives. And we also have explosives that are those that are special. Here we can have all the movements, and we have inspections as well. We cannot provide maintenance to a grenade or ammunition. We do these inspections regularly, and warehouses can keep the control here. We also have incoming and outgoing. We have a reporting module. This has been for arms and ammunition for both. And the user here has defined reports. It can do it by date, by warehouse category, and so on. We also have settings, and this is where we handle the main database of the information that will be used in the module of arms and ammunition. We have general information, we have arms and ammunition information, alerts and notices, as well as administration. The users, the registrations, records. It is important to mention that SAM is empty, meaning there is no information in it before. PACAM has no access to information. This is just local information, so PACAM cannot access the information that countries include, because PACAM only facilitates the tool, and this is installed, meaning there is support throughout the installation process. We work with the country and their staff. They are responsible for installing the system. We always aim for a transparency, and this runs locally. There is no cloud service. There is no way to, it's not possible to share information through the cloud, and it runs locally. Once the system is installed in the country is then responsible for the security of information, maintenance, the backups that they do. They are responsible for this tool.
Yo les comentaba el tema de las
I was
entradas y salidas.
talking
Las entradas no
about
es más que
incoming and
un
out.
proceso por el cual las
This is
armas
just
o las
the
municiones van a entrar al sistema. Este puede ser a
process
través de
through
compras
which
que se
we
hagan, a través
register
de
ammunition.
donaciones, y
We
esto va a estar
can
muy ligado al
do
tema de la
purchases
legislación,
or we
¿verdad?
have
Cada
donations,
país
and this is again linked
tiene
with
que
legislation.
guiarse a
Each
través de esa
country
legislación porque hay países que
has to follow the
obviamente
guidance of their own
no
country.
aplican el tema de donaciones o transferencias externas. Así que estas
So
son procesos
these
por el cual
are
mis armas y municiones
procedures
vayan a ingresar
used
a el sistema, ya sea a
to
través de entrega voluntaria, de
register
campañas de entrega voluntaria,
ammunition
de
in the
decomiso de
system.
importación o
We can have
transferencias externas.
seizures,
Es decir,
external transfers,
me he
or
encontrado con países que me
voluntary
digan, bueno, yo
delivery.
ya cuento
Some
con un
countries have said,
sistema
well,
de
I already have a
inventario tanto
system,
para
an
armas y
inventory
municiones.
system, both
Sin
for
embargo, mi
arms and
sistema no
ammunition.
cuenta
However,
con un módulo
my
para
system
el
does not
ingreso de
have
armas
a
que son, por ejemplo,
module to
decomisadas
register those that
o
come from
para
seizures
entrega
or
de campañas voluntarias, que hay países
those
que
that follow a
frecuentemente
voluntary campaign.
ejecutan
Some
y
countries carry
no
out these
tienen,
campaigns and
digamos,
people
un
bring
espacio en los
these
sistemas ya
ammunition and they do
existentes
not
para
have a
ingresar este
module
tipo de
in the
información.
system that
Entonces,
they currently have.
también tiene esa ventaja.
So this is an
Y la
advantage.
salida es ese proceso por el cual yo
And
voy a sacar esas
outgoing,
armas y municiones de mi
this
inventario.
is
Sin
how I
embargo,
take
hay
them
que
out at
asegurar que
inventory.
aunque
However,
haya
we
un
need to say that
sistema,
even
digamos,
though
un proceso de
we
salida, toda la
have a
información de
procedure for
mis
this,
armas y mis
all
municiones
the
siempre va a
information
estar
of my arms and ammunitions
presente en
will
el sistema, es
always
decir, esta
be
información
there
no
in
se
the
elimina,
system, meaning
solo
this
se
information is
transforma,
not
es decir, va a
removed,
estar de
it
activo
is
en el
just
inventario
transformed.
a armas
It
ya
will
vendidas
be
o ya transferidas. Muchas de las
either
municiones
transferred,
también
disposed of.
tienen como proceso de salida este
The
entrenamiento que
also
se haga,
ammunition may be used
proceso,
for
digamos,
training.
Que yo voy a utilizar esas municiones para
I
entrenamiento,
may
entonces
use
obviamente
them
pues
for
va a
training
tener un
purposes.
proceso
So
de
in this
salida.
case, we will have
Reportes,
to
tanto de armas y
record this.
municiones y la parte de
The
configuración de
reports
sistema, que
and
para
the
nosotros esta es la
system
base, ya que aquí es donde
settings.
se configura toda esa
This is where
información,
we set
es
up
donde se
all the
alimenta el
information.
sistema
This
y
is how we input
en base a
information
esta
in the
información,
system, and
obviamente
based on
vamos a
this
usar el módulo de
information,
armas y munición.
we will use
Algunas
the
pantallas que
module.
quiero
Some
compartir
screens
con
that I
ustedes.
would
Esta
like
es la
to share
pantalla de
with you.
inicio.
This
Hay un
is
doble factor
the
de autenticación. Ya
logging. We
pueden
have a
utilizar el
two
Google
key
Authenticator o el Microsoft,
authenticator.
cualquiera de
We
los
can
dos,
use the
ambos
Microsoft and
funcionan.
Google
Esto lo pueden
Authenticator. Both
activar
work.
o
You
desactivar
can
de acuerdo a las
activate this
políticas
or
que tengan internas,
deactivate,
¿verdad? En cuanto al tema de
disable or enable
seguridad,
depending
el
on
usuario se
your
registra,
security
pone su
practices.
contraseña y
We
le pide
have a
el código
user, a
de
password, and
verificación
we
para
also
este
have
doble
a
factor de
verification
autenticación.
code.
Esta es la pantalla de inicio. Aquí vemos
This
un
is
resumen
the
de las
homepage.
armas y
Here we
los
see a
procesos que están en
summary of
curso,
the arms
ya
and the
sea un proceso de
processes that
compra,
are
donaciones o
ongoing. It
decomisos.
can be
También para el
donations,
tema
it
de
can be
municiones. Y aquí
seizures,
puedo ver
and
todos mis almacenes
or acquisition.
registrados
And here I
y un
have all
resumen de
my
armas y
storage
municiones
facilities
que
and a summary of
tengo
the
en
arms that I have.
esos almacenes. Quiero hacer notar que toda la
I would
información que
like to
vean
highlight
es
that all the
información
information that you
ficticia o
see
información de
is
prueba, ¿verdad? No pertenece a
just
ningún
testing
país.
information.
Quiero
This
hacer
is not information
notar
from
esa
any country, and
observación.
I just wanted to make that
Aquí podemos ver lo que
clear.
es el inventario. Como ven, SAM es muy sencillo, es una herramienta que trata de ser lo
This
más
is
sencilla
a simple
posible.
tool.
Aquí podemos ver el inventario
It
donde se maneja
aims to
tipo,
be
marca,
simple.
modelos,
This
calibres
is
y
based on
el
brand,
resumen
caliber,
total de armas
model, and the
de
summary
cada
of
almacén.
all
En este
the
caso, si yo
arms or
ingreso
weapons in
a
each
esa línea,
storage.
ingreso a una arma en específico, aquí yo voy a poder ver
If I click
la
on each one of
fotografía
these,
de
I
esa
can
arma. Se
see
aconseja
a
poder
picture.
cargar en el sistema al menos 3 fotografías de las partes
We need to
frontales
upload at
y
least 3
posteriores al arma y
pictures,
específicamente donde está
and
el serial, ¿verdad? Aquí también se maneja
especially
toda la
where we have a
información
serial number,
detallada
we have all the
del
detailed
arma en cuestión,
information,
como estatus en el inventario, su número de
the
serie, su
status,
registro
serial number,
balístico, su
ballistic
número de
registration,
patrimonio, que sería, digamos, como el número activo de todo el
the
inventario a nivel nacional. Recuerden que SAM
number that they
tiene
have
un
in the
registro
national
de armas y
inventory.
municiones digamos, de un arsenal nacional. Quiero hacer hincapié que SAM
I
es
also
solo para
want to
inventario de
say
armas
that
y
SAM
municiones, no
is
es
for
un
arms and
sistema que va a
ammunition
generar
inventory
licencias. Más
only.
adelante tenemos
This
otra
is not
herramienta
a
que va a
license
ser
system.
explicada,
Later on, I will speak
pero
about another
este es
tool,
solo para
but this
armas y
is
municiones
only
a nivel,
for
digamos, nacional.
national level arms and ammunition. Speaking about ammunition, it is almost exactly, well, the difference here is because we can see inspections instead of maintenance. We have brands, models, caliber types, and we have specific information. Here we describe all the information about the ammunition, and we can also see, we can also upload photographs and documents related to the ammunition. We also have a history of everything that happens with this from the moment that they are received. Is the user changed any information? For example, they changed the serial number. This is kept in that history. This is a log of all the activities. And we also have the reporting module that, as I said, you can see the information. The reports are predetermined. And the only thing that we do is include a filter. This information can be printed out or it can be exported into a CSV file that can be also opened in an Excel spreadsheet. We can then use the information either to prepare our report or an executive report. We can add, SAM does not have internal graphs available, but we can export this information. And finally, the system setup, this is where we start to input information into the system. SAM is completely empty. We are currently working on a third version in order to facilitate uploading information. This should be good for user. The information will be entered one by one. And we saw that there was important or significant workload. So in this third version, we are trying to facilitate that information is uploaded in a more effective manner. So here we can look at the menu, we can specify brands, types, and classification, which is one of the things
los lineamientos y estas guías nos indican que debemos de conocer, ¿verdad? Tanto dónde está físicamente su categorización,
know where they are, the classification, and the national entity must be able to say how much ammunition they have, etc. And finally, as I said before, each user has roles, and depending on the role, you will see this information. The system is in English and Spanish. You can use both languages at the same time. You can also change the password and also authenticate. How do we get SAM? Well, the country or the national institution can send the request to PACAM. Well, OAS through PACAM. There are some previous sessions that take place with the IT. There is an installation guide, the drivers, and the country is able to install them, and they are always guided by us. There is a code to request a license, and the user now logins with the credentials that they created, and all the information that is in the system, as I said, is the responsibility of each country. So we also provide the training for the user, meaning we teach them how to use them, all the features, and the user is now ready. It's a very simple tool. We have installed SAM in 10 countries in 19 institutions. Those that have
han empezado con el tema de, ok, vamos a utilizar.
Many of them are now started to test it just in one computer. They get familiar with it, look at the features.
Si cumple mis necesidades o no dentro de una institución, obviamente.
And we see if it meets the needs of the institution. Some aim to be standard for all countries. Of course, each country has different needs, so we are in an assessment process with these 19 institutions in order to assess if SAM has been useful or is meeting the needs of these countries. As I said, we are in the process of creating a version number 3, and all of these versions are including the feedback from these countries. Many of them see it not as a tool that I'm going to use because maybe they already have the system and they have invested resources and time, years to have their own system. And they see SAM as a guide.
Señora Johanna, disculpe la pequeña interrupción.
Johanna, I'm sorry, I would like to interrupt you. This has been a great presentation. I believe that you are coming to an end. I just wanted to let you know that Juan Carlos, will have 10 minutes for the presentation and for questions and answers. Yes, I am about to close to give Juan Carlos the floor, who will present the other tool. Thank you.
Muy amable.
Muchas gracias, Teniente. Muchas gracias, Johanna.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Thank you, Johanna. Greetings to all. In the interest of time, as Lieutenant said, I will try to summarize the tool, the presentation of the tool. It is also part of PACAM, the Program of Assistance on Control and Arms and Ammunition. Can you please confirm that you can see my presentation?
La tenemos en pantalla, se ve claro.
We have it on screen, and yes, you have the floor. Thank you. As I said, the objective is to show this tool that is more recent compared to SAM that Johanna Garcia was showing. And this is the national license system. It's important to highlight that this is a subproduct of the other tool, the mechanism for regional communication on the transfer of legal arms and ammunition. I will not speak about MCTA specifically because Janina already reviewed this tool. But I would like to highlight the importance that MCTA can have in the topic of legal transfer among member states and the organizations responsible for these processes. It's important to say that the national license system is already available for all the countries. It was developed and recently finalized the first months of this year, and we are now testing and having conversations with countries such as Honduras, Panama, and Colombia, which are in the phase of exploring this tool. As I was saying, SNL started in the development of MCTA, where we saw that there was a need to have a tool, a digital tool, that allows member states and authorities or agencies responsible for this process of importing and exporting arms and ammunition, able to have a platform that can make the process expedite. The issuance of licenses to export and import arms and ammunition. So the question was
participarían dentro o que contarían con
how
esta
the countries
podrían
that would
hacer
have
estos
MCTA
procedimientos. Teniendo en
could carry
cuenta
out these
también, y es
procedures,
importante remarcar
also
de que si bien hay
considering
países como por
that
ejemplo Costa Rica
even
que
though
ya
there are
cuentan
countries
con
like Costa
herramientas muy
Rica that
funcionales y muy
already
avanzadas,
have very
hay países también
advanced
que pues todavía sus procedimientos
tools,
son a base de
we also
papel.
have some
Entonces,
countries
a
that
raíz
still use
y en
paper
base a la
for their
situación de
procedures.
estos
So
países en
based on the
específico
situation of
con
these
los cuales
specific
se
countries,
consultó es que surge la propuesta del
this is
SNL o del
how
Sistema
the
Nacional de
proposal
Licencias.
for
Para darles una
SNL
idea de la estructura y de la
started. To give you an
arquitectura de forma
idea
muy
of the
general,
architecture,
la
again, very
propuesta que
general,
nosotros traemos
the
como
proposal
Sistema
that
Nacional de
we
Licencias
bring
es poder
with
englobar en una
NSNL
misma
is to
herramienta
encompass
con
in
base web
this tool
pues todas
is a
las
web-based
partes y
tool,
procesos que interactúan o que
all the
forman
processes that interact
parte de
or
el
that are
licenciamiento para la
part of
importación y exportación de
licensing
armas.
for
Esto es, pues, por
importing and
ejemplo,
exporting
todo el tema de
weapons.
los registros de los operadores
Uh,
encargados de estos
This
procedimientos,
is
todas las
operator
solicitudes de
registration,
transferencias,
all
ya sea de
the
importación o
requests to
exportación de
transfer. It
armas,
can be
y
import,
pues por ende
export,
todo el proceso de
and
autorización o de negación
authorization or
de estas
denial
licencias.
of these
También
licenses.
estamos conscientes
Also,
que en muchos países el
we
proceso
are
de
aware that in
importación y
many
exportación de
countries,
armas
the
pues incluye
process for
una parte
export and
aduanal
import
o
include
junto con
customs
aduanas, y por ende pues
procedures, and
consideramos también
therefore
que el
we
proceso aduanal pueda incluirse
believe that
dentro de esta
the
herramienta
customs process
para
could
pues
be
concluir con
included
el
in these
despacho
tools
de
to
las armas.
finally
Dentro de las
dispatch the weapons.
características
So, as
principales
part
de
of the
esta
main
herramienta pues
features
es
of
poder
this
contar
tool
con
is
altos
the
estándares de
ability to
seguridad que
have
permitan
high
pues
security
que los
standards
Estados miembros tengan la plena
that allow
confianza
member states
de
to
el uso de esta herramienta, considerando pues
trust this tool,
lo relevante y lo
considering
delicado, por decirlo de alguna forma,
how sensitive
que es la información que
the
contenga
information is,
la
the
herramienta
information
del Sistema
included
Nacional de
in this
Licencias.
tool,
Algunos
SNL.
aspectos de seguridad pues es
Some security
el cifrado y
features,
autenticación de extremo a
encryption,
extremo.
and
Tiene una
end-to-end
estructura,
encryption.
una arquitectura bastante similar
It
a
has
la
an
del sistema de
architecture that is
inventario SAM
very
que ya
similar
presentaba
to
mi
the
colega
SAM inventory,
Johanna.
the
Busca también
inventory
el
system
SNL busca
presented by
también pues
Johanna.
tener
SNL
flexibilidad en
also wants
cuanto
to have
a poderse
flexibility,
adecuar a sistemas de
wants to
bases de datos ya
be
existentes con países. Es decir,
adapt,
buscamos que en los casos que
adapted to the
sea
systems
necesario,
that
pues
countries already have.
que el
In
SNL
case
venga
it is
a
necessary, SNL could
iniciar como una herramienta para todo el proceso de importación y
be a
exportación,
tool
pero en los
for
casos
the
donde ya
whole
existe
process of importing and
alguna base
exporting,
de
but also in the
datos o algo
cases
similar que pues
where the
el
country
SNL
already
pueda
has
incorporarse
a
a
database, SNL
estas
can be
necesidades.
incorporated
La
to these
herramienta está
needs.
desarrollada en
The
español y en
tool
inglés, y al
is
igual que SAM, pues
available in
también
English and
esta
Spanish, and
herramienta
just like
desarrollada
some,
en el marco de PAGAM busca no
this
adicionar,
tool
no dar a los Estados
does
miembros costos adicionales,
not
sino
want to add
estos
costs or
pues ya
burden the
son
states with costs.
cubiertos por la OEA a
These
través
costs are covered by
PAGAM y con el
OAS
financiamiento de la
through
Unión Europea.
PACAM
Es
and with
importante
the
también
funding
indicar de
from
que
the
el
UE. It
PACAM
is important
va a
to
brindar
say
todo el
that PACAM will
acompañamiento durante el
provide
proceso
all the support
de
throughout
instalación de esta
the
herramienta. Sabemos que
installation
hay
process.
situaciones
We
muy
know
específicas en cada
that there
país
are
con
very
aspectos como
specific
seguridad,
situations in each country, speaking
sistemas
about security,
utilizados. Entonces, la
systems
idea
that
es
they
poder
use.
brindar una
So
serie
the
de
idea
sesiones de acompañamiento
is
a las
to
instituciones encargadas de
provide
cada país durante
supporting
todo el
sessions
proceso de
with the
instalación de
authorities
este sistema.
responsible in each
Como parte
country
también
until they install the
de las
system.
necesidades que identificamos,
As part of
está
the
todo el
needs that
tema
we also
de los
identified,
roles de
we
usuario que
also
deberían tener
have
esta
user
herramienta. Por
roles.
ende, nosotros identificamos 5
We identify 5
usuarios principales,
main
siendo estos el
users.
administrador, quien va a
We
estar
have
pues a cargo de toda la
administrators
gestión de
that
usuarios
will be
y
responsible
configuración
for
del
user
sistema, el
management and
supervisor
system
que va a tener
setup,
a su cargo pues toda
supervisor
la
that will be
aprobación o
responsible
denegación,
for
según sea el caso, de
approval
licencias o autorizaciones
or
para la
refusal of
transferencia de armas.
licenses,
El
authorization
operador,
for arms
quien
transfer
va a hacer
operator,
registro pues de toda la información, de
who
toda la
will
documentación
record
necesaria
all
para cada caso.
documents, all
Hay un rol
information for
también
each
opcional
case.
que es el
There's
de
also an
visualizador
optional
de
role
informes que
of
eh,
report
contempla o que
viewer
permitiría también
that
poder
will
visualizar, según
allow
sea el
the
caso de cada
user
país, pues una
to
serie de
look at
informes
the
sobre las
reports
transacciones de
about
importación y
the
exportación que se
transactions
realicen.
of
Y como ya
importing and
mencionamos, pues un rol
exporting
para
and
un gestor
our
o
role
autoridad aduanera
for a
encargado
customs
pues de la
authority
aprobación
who would be
y la
responsible
denegación de
to
todos los procedimientos
responsible of approving
cada proceso de importación y exportación.
the customs procedures for importing and exporting. It's also important to highlight that throughout the installation and support process, the state will be will say what are the roles that they want to include and what are the institutions that should be participating and have the system. We identify different uses for this. We believe that this can be a very useful tool for countries like the ones we said at the beginning, countries that have conventional or manual procedures. This can be the way to digitalize them. It can be very beneficial. Some of the benefits would be to reduce administrative tasks, administrative burden, streamlining processes, and having better communication between the institutions that are responsible and that participate in the export and importing, and also have more visibility and follow-up of the customs procedures and the entire process of licensing. And also the objective is that it can connect with the existing programs in each country and give access to other institutions according to the needs of each country. It can be the prosecution office or others. Thank you very much. I apologize for the interruption, Mr. Juan Carlos. We will now have to go to questions and answers for your presentation and Patricia's presentation. Can I interrupt you now? I would just like to show you the tool.
Because you showed me something very similar to SAM, and so these are permits and that have been completed as far as the license, and also to say that these are fictitious data, but as a presentation,
is not real.
you can see the timeline with all the corresponding steps for each license that allows us to do this, to see how the license process stage is. And this allows importers and exporters to incorporate permits that have been authorized for all the parts involved. And then quickly, it shows you how the tool looks. And to thank you for your attention, just reiterate that the same as SAM, any country or any institution that is interested in having this tool can communicate with us directly or through their OS permanent mission members. And with this, we continue with the installation process. Thank you for your time. If you have any questions. Thank you very much to both for clarifying the doubts with regards to these two systems that are so useful for the control of weapons and ammunition. The country, Betsaida Lopez says or asks, what are the direct cybersecurity directors of the system to avoid criminal organizations to access this system of weapons and ammunition? I will answer this question. Reminding that SAM and the SNL are systems that at least SAM runs locally, and the securities within the system are for the authentication of the user. Cybersecurity is very strongly linked to the Department of Telematics, and it is going to be related to all the security that they handle. In other words, the system is the total responsibility of the institution, and not the system is not going to provide these security systems by themselves. It has to be a joint work, and the The responsibility will be of the system or the organization that procures these tools. Thank you very much. And we agree with you. The system by itself is very good, but the user, the human user, has to do its part so that together they can provide these security measures for cybersecurity. And each of the member states that are responsible will be responsible for the information that they provide and the authorizations that they emit. Thank you very much for your participation. And we will continue now with the next sixth and last topic. We have the participation of Nadia Bermúdez Ramírez,
del Ministerio de Seguridad Pública de Costa Rica, quien, con amplia experiencia en el ámbito jurídico administrativo,
legal advisor of Costa Rica, she has participated in the regulatory matter of munitions in Costa Rica. Her role is legal supervision and advisory. She will share the experience of Costa Rica in the development of tools of weapons and ammunitions. You have the floor.
Buenos días. ¿Me escuchan?
Fuerte y claro.
Perfecto. Bueno, ante todo, muchas gracias por la
Can you hear me?
Thank you for the opportunity. Greetings to all participants, and on behalf of the Ministry of Public Security, it's a pleasure for me to be here.
Si me pueden ayudar con el documento,
If
por
you
favor.
can please help me with the document.
Claro que sí, permítanos únicamente un minuto y enseguida nosotros le apoyamos.
Gracias.
¿Nos puede confirmar, por favor, si ya lo tiene en pantalla?
Sí, correcto. Ok. Bueno, la Dirección General de Armamento, ¿verdad?
Well, the General Director of Armament is the only state institution authorized in Costa Rica to control arms, ammunition, and explosives, and chemicals as well. The DGA.
La presentación. Okay. Nosotros estamos basados por la ley de
We are based in our Law 7530, the Arms and Explosive Acts. Article number 1 is the scope. Article 4 is
a la Dirección General de Armamento de ejercer un control y
assigning the
fiscalización
control and oversight,
armas, municiones de comerciantes como en las
both for
del Estado.
arms and ammunition. This
el
is for
artículo 11
state and also
establece
commercial. Article
la Dirección
11
General y de los
assigns the
departamentos,
creation of
y
DGA
el
and its
artículo 12
departments, and Article
se
12
indica cuáles son las competencias de cada uno de ellos.
indicates the authority of
En
each
cuanto
one
al
of
tema
the
de permisos de
areas.
importación, exportación,
Import and
fiscalización de venta,
export,
inscripción y
control, oversight,
Por favor, continúe.
selling, registration.
Un poco para entender cómo nos mantenemos
This
nosotros
is
estructurados.
to share
Tenemos una
our
dirección
organizational
general
structure.
y
We have a
hay
general director and we have 3 departments. The Department of Arms and Explosive Control, which is where I specifically work at, the National Arsenal, which is related with all the registration of weapons in the state,
de las armerías de las delegaciones policiales, y el Departamento de
and
Registro de Armas es también
arms registration, which is also a department that keeps the record of all state weapons. In the Department of Arms and Explosive Control, we see the commercial arms. Let's continue.
Dentro de las funciones que se cuentan
As part of the tasks that we have the authorization to sell, inscription of firearms, possession or bearing of arms, issue of certification,
en casos de ley contra la violencia doméstica.
and judicial prosecution in case of domestic violence.
Perdón. Tenemos un sistema del control paz.
We have a system, Control Pass. This is a system that is our database, and through this system, we have control and traceability of the weapons that are imported into our country and also ammunition. Through this system, users request a license to import and sell. This is a document required. It's a legal requirement in order to import a weapon and in order to sell these weapons. And again, this is the commercial side of this. This system allows us to have a trustworthy and real database of the number of weapons that are imported, where we can find them, and the types, calibers, etc. And the same goes for ammunition. Control Pass, for this, we have requirements that are also established by law, and we request a permit from the Ministry of Health so that it is specific for the activity, in this case, importing and selling. It is updated with a tax obligation, and it also meets the requirements established in Article 42 and 63. After this, UAEO is a unit that is not part of the director, but is part of the Ministry of Public Security, and they are part of law enforcement, and they are trained to provide technical criteria and check if these stores or establishments meet all the requirements established by law in terms of security. Then we have three possible options: an approval, auto de previo, and a denial. This is the system, Control Pass system. We have a registration of all arms, as I said. The user logs in. They have to do this. They must have a legal representative, and then they register and obtain a license. And this is when we send the unit to check the requirements in order to approve the request. It can be importing or selling, depending on what they need. Many of the companies do not require import permit because they buy it from a local company. This system is used by users and all officers that participate in any procedure of arm and ammunition control.
Vamos a ver. Tenemos empresas que cuentan con una licencia.
We have companies that have a license,
hacer esta solicitud de importación.
And they have to submit an import request, and within the system, they have to request importing, and we have a catalog of all ammunition, arms, and accessories. In this catalog, the user can select the type of weapon, caliber, model, and these are predetermined. In case that there is no model registered, so they have to send another request, and the technician of our department will let us know if this is allowed within the Costa Rican legislation, and in case it is allowed, then it's included in the catalog so that they can continue with their requesting process, as I said before, depending if they meet all the requirements that were established. We can do an auto de previo, approval, or denial. In case it is approved, they have a year to use this permit.
Tenemos acá un catálogo de armas. Este es el catálogo de armas.
This is the weapons catalog, as you can see in the characteristics.
Explosivos industriales.
We also have industrial explosive, fireworks, ammunition, chemicals, accessories. Next, please.
Okay, en nuestro catálogo de armas, por ejemplo,
in our weapons or arms catalog, we can see that we have the type of weapon, the features. For example, on the first line, we have a carabine, and this is active. There are some weapons that for some reason the technician said that we cannot allow it, so we can see a check to the side. To the right of the screen, we have either green or red. This means that the first one, for example, the carabine is allowed, but the carabine rifle is not. We can see that the user will then be able to select the weapon that they're interested in. We see the feature, characteristic types, brand, model, and caliber. The user will select each one of the types, the brand, model, and then an application will be created with all the specific features. After they request the import permit within the system, we also have a feature that when this is approved, the importer already has the permit to bring the weapon. This is why they have to request the possibility of taking it with them. And they have to present documents that confirm if the weapons came from the place that they said and if the serial number is the same as the invoice. And this is linked to the importing permit that was previously granted. And also, all of these weapons will be inspected by our colleagues from the for our unit, and depending on what they determine in their inspection, there are again 3 possible documents: the auto de previo, approval, or denial. The documents that they have to submit, they have to submit the invoice, bill of lading, and the packing list to check that all documents match. Here, we are also including making the merchandise national. And for this, we have another system, Procomer. This is from the Ministry of Commerce. It's called BUSE 2.0. After this procedure that I just explained, this is for importing and for taking the weapons. Everything has been approved, all the documents have been analyzed, and for the next process, the user must log into this system, VUC 2.0. In this system, they will fill out another form where they indicate the permit that they have to take the weapon, and they must include all the weapons or articles, the ammunition with the amounts. And this must match with everything that they have in the other system. Once they are approved in VUCE 2.0, they can definitely take the weapons and move them or transfer them to their store or to wherever they are taking them. We have an arms registration. This is one of the activities. We have the store must have a permit to sell, and the user through this store will register this in Control Paz. As I said before, everything will be done here, starting with import and enrollment or registration. And this is a procedure done by the store, by the armeria. They will have to show an invoice, and the user must go through a psychological test. They must present police clearance and the type of use. It can be for sports, it can be for personal defense. This is done through the system called Control Paz, and this is for natural persons. We also have security companies, and the stores can either buy directly from another company or sell directly to another company. And this company will also use Control Pass system, and they must provide certain documents, the invoice, the legal representation. They need to present all the tax documents. The documents include tax, social security.
Podemos continuar. Acá tenemos algunos gráficos.
This is a graph that shows the movements that we've seen. We see this by year. We have the highest number in 2014. There was a decrease in 2020 and again in 2023. And 2024, we saw an increase in the importing of weapons again.
En el tema de municiones importadas,
ammunitions,
hemos tenido un crecimiento.
We've also had a significant and unusual increase in 2018, and in 2024, we also see an increase.
Acá podemos ver un gráfico de las armas que se han
This
importado,
is a chart of the weapons that have been imported, and the main ones are pistols. These are blue.
Podemos continuar. Inscripción de armas físicas, también podemos ver.
This is the registration of
en este otro gráfico.
Physical weapons.
Que han sido inscritos. Perdón, en el anterior, ¿cuáles son que igual corresponde a las pistolas? Perdón,
and again, this is pistols again. Green people have registered more pistols. This is what the chart means.
En las inscripciones
These are registrations of legal entities or companies.
Continuamos.
Next.
Correspondiendo igualmente a las pistolas. Hemos tenido armas decomisadas.
We have seized arms. This has been either criminal or administrative. This is when they do not meet the requirements that we established in the law. And if they do not meet these requirements, then the police can go and seize the weapon. We've had an increase in 2024, similar to 2020, but this has been a result of police efforts due to the increase in armed violence cases.
En nuestro sistema,
in our system that has been implemented since 2014 approximately.
Hace poco, ¿verdad? Podemos decirlo con mucho orgullo, ¿verdad? 40
We are proud to say that we have implemented 40 requirements of improvement. This is why we have better traceability of arms and ammunition for the people in general and private security. We detected weaknesses in the judicial area, So it is difficult to modify laws. It takes time. So we have been able to implement some administrative procedures to have control on ammunition. Also, we are going to implement a new module that will be digital to have a better control, a new module for shooting ranges, and this will be digital, again, within Control Pass, and this is to obtain related to a permit for sport use. We identify regulatory improvements on arms control. We have new requirements for shops that work in maintenance and repair. They must have logs, the adequate infrastructure, and a safe storage for these arms. Before, in our law, if they have a permit to sell the arms, they also have the permit to repair it or maintain it. But we saw that there were some weaknesses and lack of control of these stores. They receive weapons to maintain them, but we don't know who brought that to them. We found weapons that are not registered. So this is why we have added some regulations. Also, we have implemented a denial of the registration of more arms in case they say that they lost the weapon. This is if it happens more than once, they have to report it when they lose the weapon. But part of security and control that we must have is that they must take care of these weapons. So it's unacceptable that they lose 2 weapons, and that responsibility is nobody's responsibility. So in this case, we are denying the possibility of registering another weapon because they have proven that they are unable to take care of these weapons. We also have the Control Pass system registration to buy ammunition. This is for shooting ranges and civilians. If these weapons are going to be used for private security, they can only carry the weapons that are registered to the company during their shift only. All of this registration these registrations are found within Control Pass, and we have requirements for transfer, and we consider customs, the approximate date of incoming, commercial invoice, number, name of the final consignee. All of these elements are part of the control.
Continuamos, por favor.
Disculpe, mi abogada Nadia,
Sí.
aparentemente nosotros tenemos esa lámina
Nadia.
como la última de esta presentación en tipo
Is
PDF.
what we have as the last slide,
Preguntas y respuestas
but
para
we
concluir
can
la
move to
participación.
questions and
No hay
answer.
ningún problema, entonces podemos
No
continuar.
problem. Yes, of course.
Hecho, muchísimas gracias. Nada más deme un minuto. Ok. Una de las preguntas principales, en base a su
One of
tema,
the
sería,
main questions
respecto a las experiencias de
is
Costa Rica.
regarding the
¿Daría
Costa
usted
Rican
alguna
experience.
recomendación para mejorar
Could
la
you
gestión
offer
de
a
armas y
recommendation
municiones
to
de los Estados
improve
miembros de la
arms and
Organización de Estados Americanos?
ammunition management
Bueno,
for
es
the
muy
member states?
importante,
Well, it is very
respecto,
important.
digamos, a la experiencia nuestra. El tema de la trazabilidad, ¿verdad?
Traceability is very important to us. It's important to have a system that will truly allow us to trace explosive arms, ammunition,
que nos permita dar esas trazabilidades para poder tener un mejor control de ellas.
to have a better control of
Es
them.
muy importante que se
For
cuenten con
us,
sistemas
it's very important to have computer systems that are easy to use, and it's important that we have information in real
Muchísimas
time.
gracias, abogada. Por último, tenemos esta
Thank you.
última
And
pregunta por
finally,
parte
we
de
have
Carlos
this
Ramírez,
last question.
donde
Carlos
nos indica
Ramirez.
primeramente,
It says
es una
that
realidad el tráfico transicional de armas y explosivos. Los controles no son suficientes.
traffic
La
is
pregunta,
a reality.
¿hay
Controls
países
are
que no
not
regulan
enough.
su compra en
Are
la
there
región?
countries that do
¿Qué
not
hacer para
regulate
estandarizar las
the
compras
purchase?
legales?
What can we do to
La
standardize
escuchamos,
legal
abogada Nadia.
purchases? Nadia, you have the floor.
Bueno, en realidad nosotros sí
Well,
tenemos, digamos, suficientes
we
controles
do
en cuanto
have
a eso,
enough
¿verdad?
controls
Y
in place,
para nosotros
and
poder otorgar un permiso,
in order
necesitamos también
to
que los países donde
approve
se
a
va a
permit,
exportar
we
generen
need
también ellos un
that
permiso para
the
nosotros
countries
poder
that are
aprobarlo.
exporting
En caso de que los
also
países
give a
exportadores no
permit.
cumplan con esos permisos, nosotros
If
no aprobamos ninguna
we
exportación.
cannot approve that procedure
Muchísimas
if the
gracias por su
country of origin does
participación,
not have
abogada.
it. Thank you
Muy
very much
amable
for
y
your
que tenga un excelente día.
participation. Have a good
Mucho
day.
gusto y saludos a todos.
Greetings to
Gracias
all.
igualmente. Ahora, como acto seguido, recibiremos la participación del general Reinaldo Salgado Beato, director general de la Secretaría de la Junta Interamericana de Defensa, quien dirigirá las palabras de cierre y clausura del Seminario de Gestión de Armas, Buenas Prácticas
And
y
now
Herramientas de Apoyo para la Gestión de
the
Armas en
closing
Occidente.
remarks.
Distinguidos participantes, senhoras e senhores,
Dear
ao chegarmos ao
participants,
encerramento desse seminário sobre boas práticas
we now
e ferramentas de apoio
come
para a
to an
gestão de
end.
armas e munições, constitui para mim uma honra muito grande, na qualidade de diretor-geral da Secretaria da Junta Interamericana de Defesa, dirigir-lhes estas palavras finais. Antes de mais nada, desejo expressar, em nome da Junta, nossos mais sinceros agradecimentos pela participação ativa e pelas valiosas contribuições ao longo desta jornada. Tivemos a oportunidade de ouvir exposições de alto nível, conhecer experiências bem-sucedidas de diferentes países, identificar soluções práticas e vislumbrar novas oportunidades de aprimoramento. Esses debates nos permitiram não apenas aprender, mas também projetar ações para fortalecer a
Not
segurança
only to learn,
hemisférica
but also
de uma gestão
protect actions
segura,
to strengthen the
eficiente
security in the
e
hemisphere for
responsável
a
de armas e
secure and
munições.
efficient and
Essa
responsible
reflexão
management of our arms
nos leva à
and
convicção
ammunition.
de que as boas
These
práticas
reflections
nesse campo
lead
não
to
se
a
limitam a
conviction that good
procedimentos
practices,
técnicos,
best
mas
practices in this
constituem
field are
parte
not
essencial
limited to
das
technical
políticas
procedures, but
públicas de segurança, prevenção ao crime organizado e defesa nacional. Quando a gestão de arsenais falha, os riscos se multiplicam,
when
podendo
national
comprometer nossas
management
comunidades,
fails, the risks are
nossas
multiplied and we
instituições
can put at
e,
risk
em última
our
instância,
communities, our
os valores
institutions,
democráticos
and
que
finally,
compartilhamos.
democratic
A
values that
Junta
we share.
Interamericana de Defesa, como organismo técnico,
IADB
educativo
as a
e
technical
consultivo
organization,
dos
educational
Estados-membros da OEA
organization
em assuntos militares de defesa,
of member states of
reafirma seu
OAS in
compromisso de
military
continuar promovendo
affairs and defense
espaços de
affairs,
intercâmbio, capacitação e cooperação.
reaffirms the commitment to
Reconhecemos
offer
que muitos
spaces
países
for
ainda
training
enfrentam
and
limitações de
cooperation.
recursos,
We acknowledge that many countries
lacunas de
still
capacitação
face
e
resource
obstáculos
limitations,
estruturais, mas é justamente por isso que a
training
cooperação se torna
gaps, and this is
indispensável.
why
Somente unindo esforços,
cooperation is
adaptando soluções às realidades nacionais e
essential.
fortalecendo a confiança mútua, poderemos avançar de forma consistente.
We
Ao
will
longo
be
desse
able,
seminário,
if we work together, we
ficou
will be able to
evidente
move
que o
forward.
hemisfério dispõe de
Throughout this
experiências
seminar,
valiosas,
it
de
was clear
profissionais
that the
altamente
hemisphere
qualificados
has
e da vontade
valuable
política
experience and
necessária para
high-level
impulsionar essa
professional, and
agenda.
there is political will
Saímos daqui não apenas com mais conhecimento, mas
to
também com maior
foster or to
motivação
promote this
para
agenda.
aplicar o que
We
aprendemos
leave this
e
seminar with
transformar boas
more
práticas em
motivation
resultados
to
concretos.
apply what we learn and
Registro ainda
transform best
reconhecimento ao
practice
Programa de
in
Assistência
results.
para o Controle de Armas e Munições, da Organização dos Estados Americanos,
And
cujo apoio técnico e
we thank
compromisso
FATMA
têm
for
sido
the technical
fundamentais
support
para o
and the
fortalecimento de
commitment.
capacidades
It
nesta
has
área.
been fundamental
Em nome
for
da
capacity.
Junta Interamericana de Defesa, agradeço a todos pelo empenho e pela participação. Declaro oficialmente encerrados os trabalhos do Seminário de Boas Práticas
And I
e Ferramentas
officially
de Apoio para a
close
Gestão de
the
Armas e
work
Munições
of
de
this
2025. Muito obrigado a todos.
seminar.
Muchísimas
Thank you very
gracias,
much.
mi general. Muy amable. Por tanto, hemos concluido con las intervenciones programadas para este seminario.
Thank you. We have now
A lo largo
completed
de la
the
jornada,
presentation for this
hemos
seminar.
podido
Throughout
conocer
this
diversas buenas
session, we have been
prácticas,
able to
marcos
learn
normativos,
about the best
herramientas
practices,
técnicas
regulatory
y
frameworks,
experiencias
technical
nacionales y
tools,
regionales
and
en torno a
national
la
and
gestión de
regional
las armas y
experiences
municiones.
around the
Entre los
management
aspectos
of
más
arms and
relevantes destaco
ammunition.
los siguientes.
I would like to
Primeramente,
highlight,
la
first of
importancia de
all,
la
the
cooperación
importance
regional e
of regional
internacional en esta
cooperation and
materia.
international
Segundo,
cooperation in this
el
subject.
papel de las Naciones Unidas y de la
Secondly,
Organización de Estados
the
Americanos
role of
en el
UN and
fortalecimiento de las
OAS in
capacidades.
strengthening
Tercero,
capabilities.
la necesidad de
Thirdly,
herramientas
the
tecnológicas e
need to have
innovadoras para
technology
el
tools
control
that
de
are
inventarios y
innovative
la
to
transferencia de
control
municiones.
inventories and
Y por
transfer of
último,
ammunition.
las
Finally,
experiencias nacionales como las de Ecuador y
national
Costa Rica, que
experiences
sirven como referentes aplicables a nivel regional.
that are a
Estoy
reference for the
convencido
region. I
de que el
am
intercambio de
convinced
conocimientos y
that
experiencias
knowledge
en este
exchange and
espacio
experience exchange in
contribuirá
this
al
forum will
fortalecimiento de
contribute
los esfuerzos
to
colectivos en
strengthening
beneficio de la
collective
seguridad
efforts
pública
to benefit
regional
public
de nuestros
security
Estados miembros.
in our member states and in the region.
Agradezco
I would
profundamente
like
la presencia y
to
participación de cada uno de
thank
los
the
ponentes,
presence and
así como
participation
del
of each one of
público
the speakers,
asistente.
as well
De
as
igual
the
manera,
public, our
quiero
audience.
expresar un sincero
Also, I would
agradecimiento a la
like to
Junta
express my
Interamericana de Defensa
gratitude
y al
to
Colegio
the
Interamericano de Defensa
IDB
por
and
la confianza
CID
brindada al invitarme a
for
participar como moderador de este
inviting me
importante
as
seminario.
moderator of
De
this
igual
important
manera,
seminar.
aprovecho la ocasión
Also, I would like to
para
take this
invitarlos
opportunity
cordialmente
to
a nuestro
invite
siguiente
all
seminario,
of you to our next
consistente en Derecho
seminar,
Internacional Humanitario y Derechos Humanos.
Humanitarian
Tema
International Rights and
principal,
Human Rights.
los
The
nuevos
main topic,
desafíos
the
para el
new
derecho internacional
challenges
humanitario
for
y los derechos humanos
humanitarian
en el
international
contexto de los conflictos actuales.
rights in
Mismo
the
se
context
llevará a
of
cabo el próximo
current
30 de
conflicts. It
octubre
will
del
take place
presente
on
año,
October
en un
30th
horario de
this
9 de la
year,
mañana a 2 de la
starting
tarde,
at
horario de
9
Washington. Para lo
a.m.
cual les
and
compartimos el siguiente banner que
finalizing at
ustedes
2
tienen
p.m.
enfrente y el código
Washington
enlace
time.
esperando contar con su amable
We
asistencia.
hope
Por
that you
favor,
can join us.
síganos en nuestras redes
Please
sociales
do
para
follow
mayor
us
información.
on
Es
our
cuanto
social
por mi
media for
parte.
additional
Nos despedimos de
information.
todos ustedes deseándoles un excelente día.
We
Muchas
wish that you
gracias.
have an excellent day. Thank you.
Recording stopped.